Good evening. We will call to order the March 12th, 2019 meeting of the City Council of the City of Fredericksburg. We will be led in invocation by Councilor Charlie Fry, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you are able.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. And before I pray tonight, I would like to ask that we take a moment of silence for the James Monroe High School student that passed yesterday. We'll take a moment of silence for about 10 seconds. Thank you. All right. Thank you to everyone. Tonight, I pray that we as council do to the best of our abilities what's best for the citizens of the city of Fredericksburg at tonight's council meeting. Bless everybody in the city. And once again, prayers out to the family of the lost student from James Monroe High School. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Officer Worley, thank you for being with us this evening. We have a presentation tonight, our annual presentation of the city managers presenting the city budget to us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Copies of the budget will be available online this evening, at least the transmittal letter and the one-pager we've crafted on budget highlights. So that'll be posted, again, sometime this evening. Full budget will be available soon. I am pleased to release for your consideration this evening my recommended budget for FY 2020. This document also includes recommendations for the FY 2025 capital improvement plan. It's hard to believe that this is my third budget as your city manager. It is certainly not getting any easier. But I still firmly believe that the city of Fredericksburg has unlimited potential we are working to maximize every single day. This budget is meant to reflect that effort while acknowledging our challenges. It does so responsibly by continuing investment in our people, our schools, needed capital projects, deferred maintenance needs, council priorities, and growing community needs. This FY 2020 budget recommendation strategically places resources where they are most needed to continue progress toward Council's 20-year vision. As a follow-up to your 2016 offsite in October 2018, you renewed your conversation about who we are and wish to be 20 years from now. That critical work has helped the city organization more clearly focus resources and attention to what matters most. Your vision and your desired future states and priorities better present clarity of purpose for the city management team and our great workforce. In doing so, we are better positioned to pull in the same direction on priorities, focusing our energy in community building efforts most impactful to our residents, businesses, and visitors alike. Reviewing the results of the last 2 years of work on council priorities in this document titled Final Report of Progress and Action in 2016 to 2018, you further directed us for the coming 3 years, again in your 18 offsite. Guided by 8 desired future states, adopted unanimously by Council in 2016 and reaffirmed in last October's offsite, we further commit to forward progress in this recommended budget. Specifically on Employment Epicenter, and I'm going to speak to briefly each desired future state, but on Employment Epicenter specifically, business attraction remains the focus of economic development. A $35 million privately funded baseball stadium is advancing. An $80+ million 2-block downtown project is before you tonight, and we are giving significant attention to our Veterans Affairs Clinic and data center pursuits, among others. Under Public Services, repairs for aging stormwater infrastructure, upgrades to city buildings, advancement and modernization of wastewater and water infrastructure, and forward-leaning pursuits of broadband capacity and speed are all being pursued with this budget. Under Learning as a Way of Life, this recommended budget offers historic support of our treasured school system. Advances on capacity needs, focuses on pursuit of workforce development partnerships to support family-sustaining job growth in the city long-term. Under Historic Preservation, we are moving toward a citywide archaeology ordinance, leading by example on riverfront park development, all while working with the Architectural Review Board to streamline process and advance preservation in our historic district. Under Cultural Vibrancy, work continues on a potential partnership with the University of Mary Washington on what could be a region-defining performing arts center. Additionally, this budget supports expansion of the library performing arts space and continues support of arts programming throughout the city. Under Green and Clean Environment, this budget continues to work towards meeting federal, state, clean water mandates, focusing on increasing energy efficiency in our city's building inventory, and maintains efforts to enhance our historic canal. And on transportation, this budget advances opportunities to leverage federal, state, and gas revenues in tangible improvements to our road and trail networks throughout the city. The city's departments, offices, officers, constitutional officers, schools, and partner agencies are striving to meet the ongoing service needs as they all collectively lean forward. To accomplish this, the total FY20 budget request from all of those totaled $115 million. And on the city side, there was a request by departments of 19 additional full-time positions. The city manager's office has historically reduced the requested amount prior to forming a final recommendation for council consideration, and this year, of course, is no different. After significant work with our city team over the past 5 months, tonight I offer a recommended general fund budget for FY 2020 of $100,435,000. This is an overall increase of 4.6% over FY 19, originally adopted budget. The general fund is the primary fund for most city operations. This budget document also includes recommendations for a variety of other operating funds, including the city's main enterprise funds of water operating, wastewater operating, transit operating, and the parking fund, among others. The city's growth and strong economy does help with increasing revenues, which helps to fund some of the growth in the recommended budget. The recommended budget also continues to strategically utilize the city's fund balance, particularly to meet the city's ongoing capital needs and help offset large increases in expenses from Rappahannock Regional Jail and the CSA, again, among others. To offer some additional highlights, the overall general fund recommendation includes $1 million in new city funds to fund the city public school system. It also increases the funding for the Rappahannock Regional Jail by $960,000. Additional funding is allocated for the Children's Services Act of $540,000. Additional funding for the library is included in the budget as well at $162,000, additional monies over last year. And additional funding for debt service in the general fund totals about $350,000. We're also recommending a 2.5% increase across the board for city employees. Again, overall revenue growth for the city is forecast to be strong. Specifically, the revenue projected growth in FY20 is an increase of $2.6 million, or roughly 2.8%. Even with that strong growth, this budget recommendation does include an increase in the real estate tax rate from the current 80 cents per $100 valuation to 84 cents per $100 valuation. Of the current rate, 1 cent on the rate is used for stormwater management purposes. Of the additional 4 cents requested this coming fiscal year, the recommendation would be to increase the amount dedicated to stormwater management purposes from 1 to 2 cents, and the other 3 cents being used for schools and general government needs. So again, the real estate rate is recommended at 84 cents. That is 2.5% growth per year since the real estate rate was last adjusted in 2017. Each penny is worth approximately $400,000 in additional revenue. The recommended real estate tax rate in FY20, if adopted, would translate into an increase of roughly $10 a month for a house valued at $300,000. The city's cost for solid waste collection operations will increase in FY 2020 as well. And again, staff recommends an increase in the solid waste collection rate. The city has not increased the solid waste fee since FY 2015. The proposed fee increase is estimated to increase revenue by $100,000 in the general fund and will be used to offset the likely R-Board projected rise in tipping fees for city operations from $28 a ton to $32 a ton. Again, that's an ongoing conversation with the R-Board. The city is facing several challenges related to capital projects in the water operating fund as well as the wastewater operating fund in 2020 and beyond. The FY20 budget recommended for both of these funds have increased substantially, and FY20 is the first full year of debt service payments related to the bonds from 2018 that funded a variety of improvements in both water and wastewater collection systems. Importantly, the recommended budget capital improvement plan currently includes $75 million in additional debt, most of which is attributable to the wastewater treatment plant consolidation project, which we'll be talking a lot about in the coming months. This level of investment will increase the required debt service in these funds substantially, as well as the rates. The city is currently in the process of finalizing a rate study, which will provide recommendations on water and sewer rates over the next several years. As a placeholder, the city manager's recommended budget includes an increase in both water and sewer rates, which will assist with the increase in funding needs in 20 as well as beyond. The increase proposed will cost the average residential user in FY20 about $5 a month in combined water and sewer bills. The city has a practice of judicially using fund balance in the budget to offset costs of ongoing capital improvements and other one-time expenditures. The city also uses the fund balance to set aside contingency for general fund in the operating budget. That will happen again, of course, in this recommended budget. As mentioned, the recommended budget for FY20 includes funding for 2.5% cost of living adjustment effective July 1st for city employees. It is important, we believe, that periodic cost of living adjustments are needed to maintain city's competitive position in the labor marketplace, both in terms of recruitment and retention. The cost of this adjustment is $650,000 in the general fund and $750,000 in all funds total. Based on positive health insurance renewal from Anthem, the city has been able to reduce overall premiums. In other words, the budget number for health insurance per employee has decreased almost $200,000 as projected in 20 versus 19. As I mentioned last year, we are working to continue to decrease the employer's share of premiums to 90% for employee only and plus one child. Those are the two categories that we're trying to get to 90% employer share. The plus spouse and plus family enrollment options are recommended to decrease to 80% employer share, again over time. The current budget recommendation advances along the path for the two plans that the vast majority of employees take advantage of. Based upon this approval, the most expensive categories of insured will rise 1% in cost to employees, with the net increase for most employees being between $4 and $8 a month, depending on the plan that they are enrolled in and the level of dependent coverage selected. The goal is to remain competitive, to treat employees equitably, while also being responsible in reducing the city's future health care liability. Again, as part of the budget process, various city departments and agencies requested 19 new positions. This is driven in part by both the City Council priorities and the city's recent growth, both in terms of population and of developed areas. However, the additional pressure placed on the city budget by a variety of factors, including additional costs for schools, salaries, social services, the jail, among others, limited, of course, all of that limited the number of positions recommended for funding in this budget. With that in mind, the recommended budget does include the request for 3 full-time positions, plus adjustments for 2 additional positions that transition mid-year. 3 new positions are an assistant Commonwealth attorney, street sanitation crew leader in Public Works, and a deputy chief of operations for the fire department. The City of Fredericksburg Police Department has been a pioneer in the region with the adoption of body cameras for patrol officers. Body camera recordings provide an outstanding record of evidence for criminal trials. The Commonwealth Attorney has noted, however, that the additional evidence has significantly increased the amount of preparation work for trial, as recorded data footage must be revised and reviewed and analyzed. This work is in addition, of course, to trial preparation work such as interviewing witnesses, interviewing law enforcement officers, and otherwise preparing the court case for prosecution of criminal offenses. The Public Works Department requested an additional crew leader position in street sanitation to assist with the growing workload in that area. The new position will act as, in essence, a litter liaison and coordinate with the R Board and the Rappahannock Regional Jail for routine roadside litter collections in the city, and also help coordinate with volunteer groups, cleanups of illegal campsites in the county, as well as other duties. The position will also be responsible for management of the existing refuse collection accounts and help ensure that the appropriate carts are issued and removed as accounts are open and closed. The Fire Department requested a Deputy Chief of Operations for the past 3 years to provide additional coverage for and assistance in increasingly complex administration of Fire Department operations. Among other duties, the Deputy Chief of Operations would provide for additional oversight and administrative support for the city, including emergency management and EMS. The city has invested in additional personnel in the fire service over the last several fiscal years in an effort to expand the city's hours of available service for emergency medical calls. The city has doubled the full-time personnel in EMS division since FY 2014 from 8 to 16 today. The expansion of service and personnel has added to the need to restore the Deputy Chief of Operations, which is a position that became vacant and for which funding was eliminated during the Great Recession. As stated, this recommended budget also includes an increase in the transfer to city schools of $1 million for a total of $29,844,000. Including the city's transfer to support Head Start of $215,000, the total transfer to the Fredericksburg City Schools operating fund is recommended to be $30,060,000. This represents a 3.44% increase in the transfers for schools and Head Start. The transfer to city schools is the largest item in the city's general fund. Fredericksburg City Schools did request in their budget, adopted on February 4th, a total transfer of $31,185,000, or an additional amount of $2.125 million over last year. This would have represented a 7.31% increase in school transfer from the current year. Population growth seen in the city is reflected in enrollment growth in the Fredericksburg City Public School System. The city council set aside $1 million several years ago to seed future capacity needs and funded a study in the current year. That plan is still being discussed, but for now the recommended capital improvement plan covering 20 to 25 does include funding for 2 expansions of existing schools, as has been discussed, one for Lafayette and one at James Monroe High School, to meet the system's near-term needs. The city funding for the Children's Services Act, the CSA fund, is recommended to increase from the 2019 levels to FY20 levels of $1.48 million. The city will face significant increases for the cost of the Rappahannock Regional Jail, as already alluded to in 20. The current fiscal year showed a significant decline in cost from FY18 and prior years. The recommended amount in FY20 is more consistent with prior year fiscal years in terms of the city's requirement to fund the Rappahannock Regional Jail. So we'd had a dip last year, but we're back to normal trends. City Council established, thankfully, the Jail Stabilization Fund to help smooth out the annual increase and decreases in city's contribution to the jail budget. In FY19, in accordance with that policy, the city set aside $605,000 from savings from that year's decrease in jail funding to add to this reservation. In FY20, the city will use rather than add to the Jail Stabilization Fund. This is also the first fiscal year where a partial impact of the new multi-purpose baseball stadium in Celebrate, Virginia will impact the city. The timeline for the construction of the stadium is for construction to be underway for much of this coming fiscal year, with an opening in April 2020 to coincide with the 2020 minor league baseball season. The baseball stadium is forecast to be a balanced fund with revenues equaling expenditures. There is no transfer from the general fund included in the proposed budget for FY20. In the future, any fund balance, any balance forward would be available to help meet the city's future obligations under this agreement. So again, we've set up a separate fund for baseball and don't expect general fund resources to be tapped. The budget recommendation for Stormwater Management Fund is for a total appropriation of $898,000. The Stormwater Management Fund includes the city's efforts to meet mandates of the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Program permit, which is also known as the MS4 permit. The city's MS4 permit requires capital improvements to help clean stormwater runoff before it returns to the Rappahannock River and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay. City also uses the Stormwater Management Fund to assist with ongoing maintenance, replacement, and upgrading of existing stormwater sewer culverts and other facilities. These maintenance activities are recommended to continue in FY20. There's a major pipe replacement project in Huntington Hills that is recommended for construction in 20. The proposed capital improvements plan also identifies major pipe replacements in Learning Lane and in other parts of the city. The capital improvements plan also targets major improvements to what we call Pond D, which is located between State Route 3 and Cowan Boulevard along Smith Run's Nature Trail. Staff recommends an expansion of Pond D utilizing wetlands and appropriate plantings, which will increase the treatment of the runoff in that watershed to a point where the city will be able to meet its state and federal mandated goals for removal of nutrients. The cost is significant, an estimated $10 million. The city will be applying, of course, for all available state grants, and obviously we'll do that in earnest. But again, $10 million is the expected price tag on that massive project to meet, again, state and federal requirements. Again, in order to support these projects, the recommended budget includes 1 new penny per $1,000 value increase of the real estate tax. If approved, the Stormwater Management Fund will have 2 pennies in revenue assigned to it for a total of $800,000 in revenue. The additional revenue in the fund enables the FY19 general fund transfer of $134,000 to the Stormwater Management Fund to be eliminated. In addition, the FY20 Stormwater Management Fund will transfer $300,000 to Public Works Capital Fund, which does not completely cover the cost of the current stormwater improvements, but it does lower the support for stormwater projects needed in the general fund. City Social Services Fund accounts for the operations of the city's Department of Social Services. In FY 2020, recommendation is for funding in the amount of $6,411,000, which is an increase of about 4.6% from the originally adopted budget in FY 19. The transfer to the Social Services Fund from the General Fund is $1 million, which is an increase of 6.4% over this current fiscal year. The Water Operating Fund is recommended to be funded at $5.7 million, and the Wastewater Operating Fund is recommended to be funded $9.3 million. Both funds are impacted by the increase in debt service requirements related to the 2018 bond issuance for improvements to the wastewater and water sewer projects, which included many projects for water distribution and wastewater collection systems throughout the city. The Transit Operating Fund also supports ongoing operations of the Fredericksburg Regional Transit Bus System, which serves the city and several surrounding counties. The city's share of funding for the Transit Operating Fund is recommended at $480,000, which is the same level as the current fiscal year. The city uses surplus monies from the motor fuels taxes to pay the city's share of the Fred Transit operations. Again, the recommended capital improvements plan is included in this budget submission and covers fiscal years 20 through 25. The first fiscal year, FY20, represents the current capital budget. Future fiscal years are considered planning years. The Gateway Boulevard project consists of construction of a road between State Route 3 north to Cowan Boulevard, roughly parallel to Interstate 95. The construction of Gateway Boulevard opens up property for economic development and is key to the city's package in pursuit of Veterans Affairs, the Veterans Affairs Clinic. Again, that infrastructure is key to the Veterans Affairs Clinic materializing here in the city. The city continues to seek alternative funding for all or part of the project through the Department of Transportation and other sources. The city has no obligation to fund this project if the VA clinic does not choose Fredericksburg. Again, we're having almost daily conversations about alternative paths to funding that road, but it is in the CIP for now. The capital improvements plan also includes projects in the planning years for repairs and renovations of 4 pedestrian bridges along the Rappahannock Canal Path and the Quarry Bridge. The plan also includes some engineering and design funds in 20 to begin that work. The total for all 5 bridges is just over $1 million. The city's plan for FY20 includes an amount of $2.5 for construction of what is called Cell F4 by the R Board, which is the landfill that the city participates with Stafford County in. The city would be a partner with the county for the construction of the next cell. The city's plan is to issue revenue bonds for this purpose, and the R Board would pay the city back for the debt service required through tipping fee revenues received by the R Board. Spotsylvania County serves both major areas of the county and city through the Mott's Run water treatment plant, and both the county and the city share responsibility for capital upgrades of that facility. The county is planning to expand the facility and renovate some of the equipment. FY20 capital budget includes $491,000 for the city's share of the cost of upgrades to Mott's Run treatment plant. Another $10.3 million is included for the remainder of the planning period for additional renovations at the plant. In addition, the county would like to expand the facility. The capital improvements plan includes an additional $2.5 million for the city's share of the expansion cost beginning in FY21. The largest project in the capital improvement plan is the wastewater treatment plant project, which impacts both Spotsylvania County and the city. The city currently treats wastewater in the context of long-term agreement with a current long-term agreement with Spotsylvania County. Most of the city's wastewater is treated at the city's wastewater treatment plant, while some portion is bypassed downstream to the FMC plant, owned and operated by Spotsylvania County. The city's wastewater plant is relatively older and requires significant upgrades to the plant within an approximate 10-year time frame to maintain its viability. Spotsylvania's FMC plant is also old and relatively small, and Spotsylvania County plans to remove it from service in the next few years and expand the county's more modern facility downstream at Massaponax to handle the additional flows. This creates a difficult long-term choice for the city. The city can either negotiate a long-term agreement with Spotsylvania County for treatment capacity at Massaponax and remove the city's plant from service, or upgrade the city's plant and have a smaller portion of the wastewater going to the expanded Massaponax plants. Again, we'll have a lot more conversation about water and sewer in the coming months. The recommended capital improvements plan includes planning based upon the city successfully negotiating a share of capacity that will be available at the expanded Massaponax plant. So again, the current CIP does assume that that's a favorable position that the city will eventually take with the county. There are parts of these projects that are required either way, such as the reconstruction of the city's influent pump station. Again, we'll be spending a lot of time on this in the coming months. The final capital program still requires negotiations with the county, but engineering and design for the expansion program at Massaponax is under consideration today by Spotsylvania County for its FY 2021 capital improvement program. The city's general fund debt burden will increase modestly in the next several years, assuming the Gateway Boulevard project is not funded using the city general obligation bonds. The major projects in the general fund requiring debt issuance include work for the new fire station, work for again, Pond D stormwater project, and again, school capacity issues. The consolidation project for wastewater will require major increases. Again, I'm stressing that because it's important. Major increases in the debt service schedule and major increases in the rate schedule based on the current recommended capital improvements plan, which is based on plans currently, again, under consideration by the county. The city will need to work very carefully with Spotsylvania County to manage the consolidation project if, again, that's the path we take between the three current plants serving the city and the county, while at the same time working to extend the life of the existing wastewater plant. The budget document you have before you is the result of many hours of hard work on the part of our departments, constitutional officers, local and regional partners, and many others. I would especially like to thank Deidre Jett, our budget manager, who spent probably 1,000 hours on this budget alone. Our finance department has played a great support role. All of our directors and departments have played a role. Assistant City Manager Doug Fawcett and Mark Whitley have played significant roles. I do appreciate all of their tireless efforts to bring this document to you all tonight for your consideration. The FY20 budget will also be unusual, at least from the staff perspective, in that FY 2020 will be the first budget administered entirely in the new Tyler Munis software. This is the new ERP project we've been working on for about a year and have a couple more years of work left, but financial pieces are now in place. Again, these recommendations are fiscally responsible, invest in public education, support our workforce, all while meeting the needs of a growing community. They also work to advance the council's priorities to a point at which staff will be able to be positioned to successfully report on achieving prescribed milestones throughout the upcoming year and beyond. The city manager's recommended budget will be updated with additional information over the next several months. Of course, the General Assembly just wrapped up their session, and we're waiting for the various pieces to sort of fall in place with the governor's signature, so it may change slightly moving forward. Of course, I look forward to working with you over the next couple months to answer any questions you may have about the budget, to updating information that becomes available, and make any changes you wish to make before you adopt a budget. I will ask Deidre Jett to pass out the budget documents while I quickly just highlight some important dates moving forward for the general public and their awareness. We certainly want to hear from the public in the coming again, several meetings. Well, let's start with March 26, 2 weeks from tonight. There will be a work session at 5:30 p.m. upstairs in City Hall, room 218. That's, again, a work session on FY20 budget. On April 2nd at 6 p.m., we'll have a special budget work session, again, City Hall, room 208. We'll be talking about capital improvements plan and debt. On 4/19, the regularly scheduled council meeting, we'll also have a work session at 5:30. We do plan to have that hosted, I believe, by the school system at Walker Grant Center. That is our plan at this point. So again, a joint school board council meeting is planned for April 9th at 5:30 p.m. And lastly, on 4/16, April 16th, we'll have a work session at 5:30, again here at City Hall, room 218, and a budget public hearing at 7 p.m. on that same evening. With that, Madam Mayor, the budget is now yours.
Thank you. I will encourage you, when you pick up your copy or go online to read it, as I'm sure every one of you will, to start at the beginning with the management letter that essentially summarizes exactly what Mr. Baruti has said tonight. This is a well-organized budget, and believe it or not, very easy to read and to find what you're looking for in it, and I encourage you to read along with us as we discuss it over the next 5-6 weeks in a series of work sessions, all of which are public. You're willing to attend, but the public hearing for public comment is the 21st?
16th.
16th,
Yes,
I'm sorry, I
ma'am.
keep getting that date
April
in my mind.
16th.
April 16th, here at 7 p.m. So, have fun.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask a
Councilor
quick
Kelly.
question, a quick comment?
Sure.
Just based on the presentation, just one quick question to staff. Are we fully funding that Commonwealth's attorney's position?
The recommended budget does include monies from the general fund to support that position in full. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's starting shot.
Yeah, I'll add.
I've got a comment too, ma'am.
Sure, and I'll add. We just got estimates from the comp board, and I know the state put some money into comp board for these positions. We just got those estimates Friday.
I'll be looking forward to seeing how much the state is going to support those positions.
Sure.
General comment, if I could, Madam Mayor. I think it's obviously now the community is very interested in this budget and how it's going to play out and what its impacts are. And first, I'm frankly relatively encouraged that we have so many people out today. This is unusual for our budget process to have such a crowd. Looking out there, I can see schools, transportation, river, housing, to name a few that I can see right off that are here on issues that are important to them. And I'm looking forward to this conversation that we are just now embarking on. I would ask that as we go forward, and I think we've talked to staff about this also, that we also will lay the groundwork in the sense of you've got a little bit of it very quickly tonight about what we are facing on a lot of fronts. Some of it we can put off, a lot of it we can't. And I'm hoping that this discussion will go beyond this budget and start looking at having a conversation as a community on what our priorities are going to be over the next 5 or 6 years. But in having that conversation, there needs to be a bit of an understanding or a request from me that we look at not only just tax rates, we look at how better we can provide services to our community. You know, what savings can we find out? Are we doing things as efficiently as we can? What are we doing for economic development, tourism, to bring in more revenue to the city? What are we doing to expand or should be doing to expand our tax base? All these things come into play, and it's not just an issue of tax rates and fees. And I hope that will be, you know, a part of this conversation. As the city manager alluded to in just some of the highlights, things like community services acts and jails and even trash are hard costs. Those aren't things we can play with a lot, and they are there in the budget to be there. There are other things that can move around in the course of the budget. The capital budget right now, when this budget is passed, is for the coming year. if we want to have further conversations about how we want to spend out in the outer years, I'm all for having those kind of conversations. But part of that's going to be, if you want this, we might not be able to do this, or something will have to be pushed off. And remember, when you push something off, that cost isn't going away. You're just pushing it again farther down the road. And one of the issues we have now is a lot of this is coming at us very quickly in the next 5 years. But I just want to make it clear that also one other point I think is important to make is one of the things we will do is the council sets the advertised tax rate. And by tradition, and I'm assuming we will maintain that tradition, we always set the tax rate for advertising higher than what the city manager's budget to give us some flexibility in how we handle the budget. So if there's any ideas out there, that's, please feel free to pass them on. But I am encouraged with the number of people that are out here this evening. I look forward to the conversations that we're going to have about this budget. I just want to make sure we come into this discussion understanding that there are multiples of interests sitting out there, even tonight, that we as a council have to deal with, including working with our own staff and having to deal with state and federal regulations. And my question about how the state treats localities with regards to funding services that, frankly, they're supposed to be picking up the majority of the cost of, that we continue to pick up as we go. And we'll have that conversation another day. But look forward to the conversation. It's just starting. If you have any ideas, love to hear it, and we will get started tomorrow as far as I'm concerned. Any questions, comments, or concerns, send them on out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barudi, Ms. Jett, and all the members of the staff. I look forward to my nighttime reading. I actually do. This is, you want to know what goes on in your city, you want to know what it's all about, look at the budget, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I just want to say real quick, and I know this is all preliminary and it's early, but I just want to throw this out there. On the $960,000 that we're looking for the jails. If I was sitting on my couch and hadn't been studying this for, been a part of this for some years, that would stick out to me. What's the what if the $960,000 is not going to jails? And then I'll tell you why I'm asking, if I can get an answer on that. If the increase of $960,000, is that correct, or am I saying that wrong? No. All right.
And that is according to an agreement.
It's kind of according to an agreement. There's not,
You don't have a choice.
I don't think you want to go down that road.
Okay.
It's a
because we
formula
need-
that's required, in
Yeah,
other words.
It's
We're
been
not-
reviewed by the jail board and the jail finance committee, and the way the agreement sets up is sort of like, this is our required contribution
Right, for the regional,
But if-
for the
as
regional.
part, being a part of the
Because it's
region.
part of a regional.
being part of the regional
For-
jail.
For those who may not realize that we have a regional jail, the city participates with Stafford, Spotsylvania, King George.
Yeah.
For facility in Stafford.
I'm with you. And then I'll say why I'm asking.
Sure.
Because I know that, and I want the public to hear that, because I know that a lot of folks have interest in the schools, and it's a great thing. And it's just, I just want to say publicly that it's sad how much we have to pay to run jails. Because I'm more bigger on what we could do, programs, and the city does a lot. I'm not saying that we don't, but it's just when you hear those numbers and we vote on these budgets, it's a lot of money that we support criminals with, and that's like, I'm just as regular as anybody else sitting in the audience, and it's kind of like, how many kids could you send to school? How many kids could you send to get to a workforce development program, or to come out with a trade or HVAC or so on? It's just, that's one of my pet peeves, and I just wanted to just take a note on that, because it's kind of sad, and I know it's part of what we have to do. I understand that. It's just, I just had to get that off my chest so I can proceed forward.
Mr. Whitley?
If I could take that in a slightly different direction.
No problem.
And because some of this, jails are what they are. It's a local service, and we have to provide it. But council, very wisely, I would say several years ago, set up a jail stabilization fund on the balance sheet, because we have seen through our history with both the juvenile center and the jail that the contributions can go way up and way down in a given year. So what you'll see in this budget is a pretty big increase for the jail, but we'll be using some of that jail stabilization fund this year to help take some of the sting out of that. Not all of it. This past year, when we had a huge decrease, we set aside money into the jail stabilization fund, so you have a little bit of a sort of a cushion there, and I think that was a very wise thing council did, to take some of the major change, major increases and decreases, and smooth them out. So I wanted to point that out because
So-
I thought council
So
was
the full
wise to do
amount of that money will not decrease we will not see the full impact of $900,000 taking away from other things. It'll be less than that, because we'll be able to use that fund. Gotcha.
And
Okay.
And thank you for stating that. I just want, the public to hear it as well, as I've been sitting in on these meetings for years, and also just to throw the awareness, because this one always sticks out to me. And, I do whatever I can to try to keep kids from going that route. The best that I can. I'm only one man in the council. Even with the Midnight Madness program, the end result of that program, which is a minimal amount that we do, it's a big effect on the community that is really helping for the future. So that's not for me to plug Midnight Madness. It's just saying that we do take steps to handle these types of issues, and also that the fact that we have to just looking at these numbers. That's all, and then I'm gonna stop for a second. I'm gonna stop, but looking at these numbers, the fact that we're a city surrounded by counties, we're the go-to place. So any crimes that happen in the city falls back on the taxpayers for folks that are kind of passing through at times. And which end result is if somebody does some criminal activity, they're in jail, happens in the city, so on and so forth. We have travelers that come in and we pay the bill for all nonsense that happens, and it's a domino effect that goes to everybody's pocket. So that's all I have. I didn't think I was going to speak on that, but that 960 just sticks out a lot.
All right, Vice Mayor Withers.
Yeah, going back to the jail, I think the state has lowered their per diem. What? It's on. Hadn't the state lowered their per diem rate also? As to what it was when we first made this agreement?
Yes, sir, and I apologize, I thought your mic was off.
And,
Several years ago they did,
Yeah.
and it has come up a couple times since to see if they
know-
could go back to the per diems before the
know,
recession, but it hasn't come
I
through
know a
yet.
lot of the citizens are interested in what we can do for schools and what we can do for different things. But you need to understand that the state's just not carrying their share of the load in most of these. The state of Virginia is in the lower, I think, around 10 to 15% of how they fund our school systems. They are down there with Alabama and Louisiana and those states. And we are one of the richest states in the union. So I know some of you are threatening us with schools. You ought to be talking to the state folks also, because they're the ones that are really hurting our school systems, because they're not funding them like they should be, and they can afford to do that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I actually just wanted to piggyback off of what Vice Mayor Withers had said around the school funding and the state's responsibility toward it. And, an additional point to that is the composite index and the way that the state funds each locality's schools. The way that it is calculated is actually, in my opinion, very detrimental to the city as opposed to the counties. If you were to go and take a look, there's actually a downloadable spreadsheet, from the state. You can take a look to see the percentages. If I'm not mistaken, it's roughly 60% of the schools of schools needs that are funded through the state for the surrounding counties, Spotsylvania and Stafford, but it's less than half for the city of Fredericksburg. So by that regard as well, the Commonwealth of Virginia is not treating the city of Fredericksburg, at least in my opinion, on an equal footing to the surrounding counties, and that does put an additional burden on the city. And so something else to take to your elected representatives at the state level is that the city of Fredericksburg is not being treated fairly when it comes to the funding of the school district.
Thank you, Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I didn't think we were going to speak yet on budget issues, but just to piggyback on what's been said, the composite index is something that the city has tried to address, has addressed at the state level for decades, and to no avail, because there are just not enough small cities to really make any changes in the state level. It just doesn't work to the state's advantage. So if you do talk to your state representatives, know that we've pushed that issue for decades. And what we have also attempted to do is come at the funding from a different angle, looking at programs like ELL programs and special ed programs and programs that can be very expensive, and try to have those addressed, because while the composite index would be fabulous if it changed, I don't know that it's going to happen in anyone in this room's lifetime. So we have tried to come at the state funding from different angles. And so just if you do contact your state representatives, keep that in mind. Any assistance and pressure you can put on other folks would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Well, having said all that, we have our work laid out for us, and I assure you we're going to address the challenges that this budget presents in a very logical and, I might add, compassionate way. So we will be working it, and we will welcome, as Councilor Kelly said, input from our citizens as well. We have one public hearing tonight, item 5A. I will call upon our clerk to please read item 5A.
Renewing the non-exclusive franchise to Old School Tours LLC for pedal cycle tours of the downtown.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Danelle Rose. I'm the Tourism Services Manager for the City of Fredericksburg. The issue I'm here for this evening is, should the franchise agreement with Old School Tours LLC be renewed? The recommendation is that City Council should renew the franchise agreement for 5 years. The city seeks to encourage and promote tourism within the city while maintaining public safety, efficient and orderly movement of vehicular and pedestrian traffic, the aesthetic charm of the city, and the quality of life for the city residents and tourists. Old School Tours LLC is qualified to operate a professional tour guide service. In 2018, the City Council granted a franchise to Old School Tours for operation of pedal cycle tours downtown. The initial term of that franchise expires on April 30th, 2019. Both the city and the franchisee wish to renew the franchise for a new 5-year term, which would begin on May 1st, 2019 and end on April 30th, 2024. Old School Tours LLC has a positive fiscal impact on the city, both through direct business license taxes and indirect spending of the many visitors who experience the business's enjoyable and enlightening tours.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Are there any questions for Ms. Rose regarding Old School Tours? Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a basic question. I have not heard of any complaints about the tour, but I was wondering if there were any that were brought to the city's attention at all.
No, we haven't brought any complaints.
Okay, and I know that when we looked at this a year ago, I'm not sure the exact date, we did ask for certain things, like to not be sort of a loud visible tour during sort of church hours and things downtown, and I guess I'm
Correct.
just verifying that that's all been complied with.
Yes, they have. They all the regulations that they have put in place. So, and I know the noise ordinance. They do follow that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
They do follow it, but it is kind of fun to see them laughing and singing and pedaling that thing, which is hard to pedal. Remember, we all tried it. Any more questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Rose. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this matter? All right, then we will declare the public hearing closed. This matter is before us for a first read. Councilor Devine?
Madam Mayor, I move an ordinance on first read renewing the non-exclusive franchise to Old School Tours LLC for pedal cycle tours of the downtown.
Please, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Before I open public comments, I would like to announce to the audience and our community, because I know so many of you are interested in this matter, that we have arranged for the Mosley team to be with us on Wednesday, March 20th. We've advertised a special work session that evening on the topic of school population projections. The format will be a work session, not a public hearing, but we will hold it here in anticipation of folks wanting to attend this meeting. We will welcome questions, however, received in writing, submitted by 4:30 Friday and to our clerk, Tanya Lacey. Questions germane to the topic of school capacity projections and methodology, because that will be the topic for the work session. Please join us for this important conversation. And also at this time, if council does not object, I would like to move item 10C to the council agenda as item 7A. This item is related to the funding needed for the transition of VPI students from HUMERSA back to Walker Grant Center. If approved, as I predict it will be, the city would immediately move money now into the school system to make this transition possible. As I suspect many people here tonight are interested in this topic, it makes sense to advance it on the agenda so you don't have to wait through the entire meeting to hear that item discussed. So if council does not object, we'll make that item 7A. Okay, so done. City Council provides an opportunity each regular meeting for comments from citizens who have signed up to speak before the start of the meeting. To be fair to everyone, please observe the 5-minute time limit and yield the floor when the clerk of council indicates that your time has expired. Decorum in the council chambers will be maintained. Comments that are not relevant to city business and behavior that is disruptive, such as applause, are inappropriate and out of order. We have tonight 11 folks who signed up to speak before the meeting began. The first is Gregory Gavin.
Hello, my name is Gregory D. Gavin. I'm at 242 Stony Hill Road out in Hartwood. Dear council members, I'm an activist in Hartwood, Virginia, primarily focused on land rights, public land stewardship issues, including clean roads, clean parks, improved access to public lands, and proper zoning requirements. I speak to improve the lives of all. Thank you for having me here today. I've come as a friend with open arms to introduce the subject of universal accessibility to the Rappahannock River in Hartwood. To first build a coalition of interested parties to share access. To second, address the security concerns. Third, to make you aware of the complex but at the same time simple problems and solutions. And fourth, to ask for your attention and input. Feel free to opine, as all concerns are welcome and valid. All concerns are welcome and valid. As you know, we in Hartwood are connected to you in the city of Fredericksburg by the Rappahannock River, by water and by land, and hopefully by spirit. Specifically, the Stafford County-owned land at 500 Greenbank Road and 25 Old Banks Road require our focus. These are the sites of Lake Mooney Riverfront Park and Stafford County public public utilities intakes, respectively. Both are on the Rappahannock River. According to the Stafford County land records in Book 32, page 151, signed by the city of Fredericksburg and the Stafford County in 1998 to settle a long-standing disagreement over Stafford's right to tax the city of Fredericksburg's riparian land, the land was sold. And there exists covenant number 3. Covenant number 3 allows for common access for all to cross these properties as it states, number 3 states, the city reserves a non-exclusive access easement across said parcels for the purpose of ingress and egress to the city's adjoining property along the Rappahannock River. Such an easement, backed by the Americans with Disabilities Act, allows for everyone, including the citizens of Fredericksburg and Hartwood, to have access to these landlocked and highly sought-after riverfront parcels that serve the few and restrict the many in Hartwood. According to the Fredericksburg Watershed Management Plan on page 41, the conservation easement sets a generous limit on future access facilities, potentially allowing up to 5 new access points. That's 5 new access points, plus the improvement of several existing primitive access points to full public access. An additional site for public access to the Rappahannock River may be considered if one is desired in Stafford County at the Rocky Pan Water Intake Facility. This site is consistent with the river access criteria. Like Hunting Run, the Rocky Pen Run area has the infrastructure in place so that very little additional disturbance would be required. That's on page 42. According to the Stafford County Comprehensive Plan, one is desired in Chapter 6.8.3 on future parks facilities. I quote, "In addition, there are properties owned by other entities that are proposed for park development or preservation of natural resources. These include City of Fredericksburg owned riparian land along the Rappahannock River." That's on page 6.59 of the Stafford Comprehensive Plan. To assist in creating universal accessibility, which is access for all, including the physically impaired, the physically challenged, the old, the young, and the financially disadvantaged, I respectfully request to see an accessibility audit to make sure that the Fredericksburg Watershed Management Plan is ADA compliant. When was it drafted? What does it say? Who signed it? Please take a moment to reflect on these words and consult with the Watershed Property Easement Committee. If you need informational assistance regarding accessibility guidelines in parks, trails, and trailheads, please contact Nancy Horton. She's an information specialist at the ADA in Mid-Atlantic in Rockville. Moving forward, I intend to file a concern with the United States Department of Justice to make sure that the Fredericksburg Watershed Plan is ADA compliant and accessible to all, regardless of their physical impairment, starting with the county-owned gate at 25 Old Banks Road and the Lake Mooney Riverfront Park at 500 Green Banks Road. At the same time, I will also apply for funds from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries to construct a universally accessible trail and trailhead and construct all amenities afforded to the physically impaired to improve their general welfare within the Rappahannock watershed at all access points. Please take a moment to visit these properties. Perhaps one of the esteemed members of this chamber can accompany me. I seek to improve the lives of all by improving access to the Rappahannock River for everyone. Please join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. Judy Love.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I moved to beautiful Fredericksburg about 2.5 years ago to be near family, and as I'm 73 and have had some health challenges, so I can't work anymore. I never made more than $15 an hour, even as a Washington State Jail Inspector and RCW Revised Code of Washington writer, parole officer, therapist, social worker, so I'm not well retired. My son and his wife kindly allowed me to live in their home, in their guest room, for my 2 years on the waiting list for Mill Park Terrace, where some people there say they've waited 3 to 5 years to be able to live there. Sadly, it is a very limited, subsidized resource for only, I put down at first 128 low income, over 62 and or disabled people, and then I found out that there are actually 129 units with 2 couples living there, and there's 651 square feet per unit. So I became concerned about what else other people could do to wait that long, to find other decent, affordable housing here. So I joined 3 different local, nonpartisan organizations, as well as my church, to work together toward more affordable housing for low-income people in this area. Virginia Organizing has been researching the local affordable housing crisis, there's some of us there, and its effects on our community, talking with many residents, having public events for input for about 18 months. As seen in the recent Freelance Star article focusing on the Virginia organizing efforts, the Fredericksburg Sheriff's Office delivered 435 eviction notices in 6 months recently. That's in addition to homelessness and the working poor, what they call ALICE people. This really is a crisis, and it's probably going to get more so, according to projections. The most promising solution from our research here and in other communities is a housing trust. This could provide first-month security deposits for tenants, emergency loans for tenants facing possible eviction, loan programs, and home down payment assistance for teachers, police, firefighters, and so on. And hopefully assistance to low-paid service workers who struggle to pay for gas to drive from less expensive living areas, in the hope that this might help reduce rapid employee turnover in Fredericksburg restaurants, hotels, and small businesses. And I leave it to you all and perhaps others with that sort of expertise in our group to see about funding, but I've heard some creative and interesting ideas about funding as well. So thank you very, very much for allowing this.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Katie Finlayson.
Hello, my name is Katie Finlayson. I live at 1105 Great Oaks Lane. I'm an assistant professor of geography at the University of Mary Washington, though I'm not here as a representative of the university. I also have two sons, one of whom is a first grader at Hugh Mercer. The other is going to start at Hugh Mercer in kindergarten in the fall. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I also appreciate that the City Council agreed to pause the vote on the school board budget at the last meeting. I've shared with you all a document where I presented my analysis of Mosley's school enrollment projections using publicly available data, as well as some alternative models. And I also appreciate the opportunity to submit questions to the upcoming meeting with Mosley. But it's come to my attention after the last school board meeting that Mosley's first recommendation was actually to build a new school, and the expansion plan was not the primary recommendation. So even according to what, by every one of my measures, are very conservative enrollment estimates from Mosley, they still came to the conclusion that the best course of action was to build a new school. Some have criticized the plan to build a new school, saying that it won't be needed since we're going into a period of declining births. But while this is true nationwide on average, Virginia's urban areas, including Fredericksburg, are expected to increase in population, and it's families that are moving here. UVA's Weldon Cooper Demographic Research Center, which is used by the Virginia Department of Education, notes, and I quote, "More young families are staying in Virginia's urban areas to raise their children and enroll them in local schools, fueling the strongest population growth many Virginia's urban areas have experienced since the 1950s, end quote. I realize that addressing this problem long-term requires funding, of course. As I said at the last city council meeting, I fully support raising property taxes. But I also realize, as one city council member noted, that we have significant income inequality in our city. And I recognize that raising property taxes has the potential to negatively impact our most vulnerable residents. However, there are numerous strategies for easing the property tax burden on low-income residents. And do you know what the single best way to alleviate poverty is? Education. I speak for a number of other parents when I say that I am frustrated. When we heard from City Council, we were told that it wouldn't be appropriate for City Council to dictate the school board's budget priorities, and that the City Council has long supported funding requests from the school board. When we heard from the school board, we were told that the reason the Lafayette expansion plan was put forward is because the City Council has so consistently underfunded our city's schools, so there was no chance of building a new school. So which is it? At the last City Council meeting, one of the council members noted that while we, the concerned citizen speakers, wanted great schools, we surely wanted safe streets as well. To that I say yes, of course we do. And the idea that we would have to choose between safe streets and effective public schools is appalling and points to much broader issues with city funding and budget priorities. So what do we need to do to help convince you that the expansion plan is not appropriate and would be a poor use of funds long term? Do I need to analyze more data? I'd be happy to collect and analyze whatever data you would find useful. Do you need literature on the problems with overcrowding in schools, or research on the impact of education on income inequality, or on the various ways to calculate school enrollment projections, or on the expected population growth in the city of Fredericksburg? I'd be happy to share research on these topics with you. Do you need to hear from more teachers on the problems that they are facing right now due to overcrowding in Hugh Mercer and in Lafayette? Or do you need to hear from more residents that they support a property tax increase? The reality is this is a significant problem that our city is facing. And my analysis shows that it's a more serious and long-lasting problem than the projected enrollment estimates show. This problem isn't going anywhere, and neither are we. We want to work together with you and with the school board to solve this. So we need to hear from you what needs to be done to better address the needs of our city's children, because we are in this for the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Wolven.
Katie, but my name is Jennifer Wolven, and I live at 129 Princess Anne. Good evening, Mayor Greenlaw and City Council members. I am the mother of a first grader at Hugh Mercer and a 10th grader at JM. My family and I are relatively new to the Fredericksburg area, having moved here from Austin, Texas in 2014. We love this quaint, funky, progressive, compassionate city, and we want to see it continue to grow and prosper. That growth should reflect our community values. If we truly value our youth and their educational experience, action is required. Our elementary schools need a comprehensive, long-term solution, not a quick fix. Educational research shows that overcrowding in schools can lead to behavioral issues, feelings of detachment, and ultimately a decline in academic achievement. This is especially true for our most vulnerable student populations. As a public school teacher with over 20 years of classroom experience, half of which was spent in Title I schools, I understand just how important it is that teachers and administrators provide innovative learning opportunities, make personal connections, and establish trust. This can be nearly impossible to do when schools are overcrowded. If we are to truly be a progressive and compassionate city, we need adequate school space. We need well-supported, well-paid teachers who are not stretched so thin that they cannot give their full attention to the needs of all students. Over the past several weeks, I have attended city council meetings and last week's school board meeting because of my growing concern regarding overcrowding in our elementary schools. Here's what I've noticed. First, there are a great number of citizens who share my concerns and who have begun a very organized mobilization. Collectively, there is a wide array of experience and knowledge. We have teachers, professors, researchers, finance professionals, to name a few, who have addressed City Council and the school board, sharing their unique perspectives and expertise in regards to our school. I am asking you to take advantage of these voices and include them in ongoing conversations. Community members need a place at the table during future planning meetings. Second, as I listened at the school board meeting last Monday, it was clear that the school board is passionate about teachers and their impact on our students. It was clear that they have been determined to secure raises and more teaching positions. I commend them for that. Our teachers deserve a decent salary. Our students deserve excellent teachers, and there is a connection between these two things. It was also clear that the board feels exhausted, frustrated, and powerless when it comes to the budget process. I recognize and appreciate that City Council is prepared to approve a budget increase that will help with additional teaching positions and teacher raises. I also appreciate your willingness to allocate millions of dollars towards the expansion of Lafayette Upper Elementary. Before hearing from your constituents what Lafayette might look like with an additional 300 students, the overcrowded cafeteria, the nurse who doesn't have time for lunch, the crowded hallways and buses, special classes on an 8-day rotation, the teacher workspaces and closets. Before being told about the dangers to children's emotional and academic development in overcrowded learning environments, before hearing about the potential pitfalls with current growth projections, and before knowing how willing many of your constituents are to pay higher taxes so that the children of our city can have adequate schools, before all of this, I can understand how you might have come to the conclusion that a LU's expansion was a good solution. However, you are now in possession of a whole new and diverse data set. So what are you going to do? City Council, as the stewards of our public funds, I ask that you not waste these funds on an expansion that is not in the best interest of our students, teachers, or communities. I ask instead that you work with the community to develop a long-term solution that includes a tax increase, more than 4 cents, with an increase to the waiver limit to protect those on a fixed income, and ultimately a new elementary school. No more excuses, no more kicking the can. We have reached the end of the road. It is time for action. It is time for a new school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolven. Hillary Delwich.
Greetings, City Council members. My name is Hillary Delwich, and I live at 1202 Buckner Street. I'm speaking to you tonight as a concerned mother who currently has one son that is enrolled in kindergarten at Hugh Mercer and a daughter that is anticipating enrolling there in the fall of 2019. I'm here to urge you to reconsider the long and short-term plans of Fredericksburg City Public Schools and what actions we as a community can take immediately to help the situation. This past fall, we started our kindergarten year as any parents do, nervous and excited. We were fortunate to find our son had been placed in a classroom with a teacher who seemed to be a great fit for his personality and learning style. He seemed to be adjusting and enjoyed school. Just a few short months into the school year, we've received a letter home from our school, and could you imagine, to our surprise, our son would be placed in a classroom located in a gym with 40 other 5 and 6-year-olds, We wondered how this could happen and where we went wrong to put our child in this situation. As the year has gone on, we have discovered that this is just the tip of the iceberg with overcrowding issues as we are facing in our public schools. I never imagined when enrolling my son in a public school, I would be faced with questions of whether his basic essentials would be met on a day-to-day basis. Questions such as, will my child actually have a classroom? Will he have a place to eat lunch? And will he have enough space to play on a playground? To ask these questions is, simply put, unacceptable. We are now at a point where the mismanagement of our schools has gone too far. I've heard members of both the school board and city council comment to the public and ask them where we've been the past couple of years. As a household with 2 working parents, I can tell you where I've been. I've been home with my children. I've been home at night being a responsible parent, creating good habits for them, reading to them before they go to bed, and spending the few hours that I have with them while they're awake, ensuring that I have time with them, all to prepare them to make sure they are good citizens in our public schools. I know that I might be in a unique situation and other parents may have other reasons for not being here, such as they're working, they don't have childcare, or they may not have lack of transportation. We speak for them too. Now, instead of spending limited time with my children, I'm here with my elected officials, trying to figure out the next steps, questioning decisions, learning about city budgets, and understanding how our tax dollars are spent. I will never be a citizen that underestimates the impact or inactions of my elected officials and the ramifications these have on my children. I will speak up for our small citizens that deserve a proper school environment, a classroom, a seat for lunch, and a safe place to have recess. In conclusion, I strongly encourage City Council to look into the following: accountability for the logistical issues surrounding the underutilized Old Walker Grant School. This should have been figured out prior to $12 million being spent and classrooms being empty. Increasing the property tax rate and exploring other revenue opportunities to help fund the desperate needs of schools on all different levels. Teacher pay increase and retention. The first step, I believe, is to have a meaningful panel discussion regarding the Mosley study, allowing subject matter experts outside the City Council to be involved. I look forward to working with you on this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Delwich. John Gerlach.
Good evening. My name is John Gerlach. I live at 809 Charlotte Street. I'm looking forward to reading the budget. Start it tonight after the meeting and learn how the sausage is made in the kitchen when it comes to how you do a budget and how you decide how to allocate the limited funds that you have. I just wanted to echo a few things that you've heard tonight and a few things that you haven't heard that you will hear in the coming days. You've got a lot of balls in the air. Our schools are overcrowded. We have an issue with the debt service. There's pressure from the stormwater management and wastewater treatment issues, as well as the schools. Our population continues to grow. The decisions you make regarding the schools will have a profound effect on our children, which in turn will have a profound effect on the quality of life in our city. I don't have the answers. I don't know if it was Yogi Berra who said this, or maybe it was my wife, but there's no end to what I do not know, right? So this is an exercise in discovery and learning new things and trying to make the best decision that we can. I humbly ask you to take it slow with this budget as it regards the school expansion. Get the best facts available. Let the experts compare their notes and methodologies with each other. You heard from Dr. Katie Finlayson tonight, and although I am glad that you are going to have a special meeting and invite written comments, written questions, I'm concerned that Mosley is going to provide the answers that they want you to hear. And I would encourage you to allow experts such as Dr. Finlayson to participate in the process beyond just submitting written questions. I think a good sit-down face-to-face among the experts, they can discuss their methodologies and compare them, pros and cons, would help you make the right decision that's best for the city. And I do have some concerns. I don't know anybody from Mosley, but I understand that they might benefit financially from a decision to their architects to build a new school or to build an expansion. I don't know. I haven't looked into that, but just want to make sure that they don't have a dog in the hunt other than to provide you with the best advice possible. I don't say that to cast any aspersions. I just do not know. As you have heard, the parents are deeply concerned. The folks you see here tonight are the tip of the iceberg in the city. A lot of parents can't be here because they have children. They're here tonight because of the strength of their convictions. You owe it to them, and especially the children, to have a robust discussion about how the money will be spent on the schools. Need to get this right. We have to have knowledgeable discussions with knowledgeable people. And in closing, I'm concerned that we have the Walker Grant Center, which was rehabilitated and turned into offices for the school administration. I understand they're nice offices. I understand that that building was originally designed as a school, and we have students in the elementary school overcrowding situation. And one of the options for you to look at and consider is turning that back into a school and perhaps moving the administration into another facility. I just want you to be able to know when your decision is made that you've done the fiscally responsible thing and that it's in the best interest of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerlach. Ann Little?
Good evening. My name is Ann Little. I live at 726 Williams Street. I'm here tonight to speak to the issue of school overcrowding. I'm not a parent, but I'm a citizen, and good schools make good cities. Let me first say that I understand that no department in the city ever receives full funding from our budget. We have finite resources, and City Council must balance needs with the available funds, just like we do at home. I also understand that City Council does not control or even oversee the budget for the schools. The schools ask for funds, City Council allocates funds, and the school administration decides how those funds are spent. After last week's budget hearing at the school board meeting, I question how much input and oversight the school board actually gives to the school's budget. And frankly, our school budget does not serve the needs of our children. The school administration budget is bloated. It needs major scrutiny. I went through it. I was appalled at some of the salaries. We need to raise teachers' pay so we retain good teachers. But we have a superintendent who oversees 4 schools, making more than the Stafford superintendent who oversees 33 schools. And this budget now asks for an additional $19,000 raise for our superintendent. We have a 5% increase across the board being asked for the administration of the schools and the teachers who need it, while the rest of the city staff is just now proposed in this budget to get a 2.5% raise. Right now, we need to address the school expansion, because if we don't get this right, we'll have a much bigger mess in just a few years. But I propose that all of us pay more attention to how the money at the school is being spent. The school board funded a study by Mosley that recommended a new school as the best option and the Lafayette expansion as the second choice. The school board last week discussed the Lafayette expansion plan, and they all agreed, well, not all of them, but most of the school board agreed, they didn't like the proposed Lafayette expansion and kind of just talked about the Mosley study not being good. And then to the astonishment of everyone there, the school board voted to approve the Lafayette expansion plan. Then the school board sends the expansion plan to City Council and asks you to fund it. We ask City Council to look at this expansion plan for what it is, a Band-Aid that is not in the best interest of our children. We ask that the data from the Mosley plan be shared so the methodology can be examined. I would also ask the City Council to send the Mosley study to Weldon Cooper and have them analyze the data. I understand that the school administration was offered this option for only $500 but turned it down. Why would we not want a second opinion on this issue from a very reliable source that the entire state uses for school issues? I would also like the ability, or we would like the ability to question the Mosley consultant and their data on the school study, and thank you for giving us that. We want the best information that we can have going forward, and I know City Council does too. We'd like to slow this train down and make sure that what is put in place serves the needs of our children for years to come, and not just in the short term. The city is having growing pains and the demand for more services. Taxes need to go up, but expenses also need to be managed. We can manage our problems. We allow the public to understand the issues and have a voice in that solution. The parents who are speaking up are not an unreasonable group. They want to help find solutions and are educating themselves constantly on this issue. They want what's best for the city, and they are willing to work to make the best solution a reality. I would like us to think outside the box, put pressure on the school administration to spend wisely. This will take time, but we need a long-term solution to the overcrowding of our schools and make sure our children have a good learning environment. These are things we can all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Little. Jeff Small.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Small. I'm the circuit court clerk here in the city, and I'm glad I didn't come asking for money tonight. I'm at the clerk's office for the last 7 years. We've worked really, really hard to give the city the best clerk's office in the state. We provide efficient service that's friendly and respectful, and we do everything we can to earn the trust of the city. The reason I come tonight is because there's an item on the agenda to allow the police chief to abate parking tickets to jurors that are parked in a spot more than 2 hours while they're waiting for their case to be heard. It's a good resolution. I encourage City Council to pass it. As city management and City Council is aware, and many people in the city, jury management is a very hard issue. We're a small city, and it's hard to get jurors. And when the jurors do come, we realize they're sacrificing a lot of what they have to do that day to serve on the juries. The most frequently asked question we get at the courthouse from jurors is, where do I park? And the first thing we tell them is not at the post office, because if you did, your car's probably towed already. This will really help. I've got a great relationship with Dave Nye, our chief of police, and if the city passes this, we'll be able to provide a good service to our jurors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Kristen Kinnaman.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Kinnaman, and I live at 1218 Brent Street. I am here tonight because I have growing concerns regarding the challenges that our city and schools are facing. For the last month, I have spent hours attending meetings, talking to city residents, teachers, administrators, school board members, and city council members about school overcrowding and the lack of appropriate resources in the school's operating budget. It is as if I have been peeling back an onion to discover new concerns with each layer that I peel back. It began with the most obvious challenge, the overcrowding at Hugh Mercer, but has only led to further discovery. By becoming more engaged, I have learned that although Lafayette Upper Elementary School is not at capacity, parents, teachers, and staff do not know where we can put an additional 300 students or provide for that increase in some of the common areas. Teachers and administrators alike have explained that behavior issues increase each year, and feel it is attributed to both overcrowding and lack of proper resourcing. Specifically, the lack of paraprofessionals at all grade levels to assist in these classrooms. We need to help the entire school population by providing the appropriate funding needed. The school board has voted in support of an operating budget that will increase pay and add positions so they can start to address the challenges they face. The increase to the operating budget is paramount to retain and attract a professional workforce. During the future budget vote, I ask that you as City Council accept and approve the school operating budget to attract and retain teachers. Also, as part of the budget submission, the school board sent forward a capital improvement plan. This plan, as you know, requests funding for an expansion at Lafayette, which is the recommendation of the recent Mosley study. I have questioned some members of the school board about this recommendation, not all school board members, but I have questioned some, and the response I get is it is only a plan, we don't have to stick to it. I find this extremely frustrating. During the school board meeting, it was as if they were only choosing this option because they had no other recommendation at the time, and it was at least something. We need a plan that City Council and the school board can agree without impacting our students. Last month, you, City Council, tabled giving the school board and City Council more time to address the potential errors in the Mosley growth calculations and methodology. As you know, this will happen on March 20th. We cannot accept that an expansion to Lafayette is the best recommendation until full review and analysis of the Mosley study is complete. When Mosley presents their findings, we must question their methodology. To do this, you need the right individuals in the room asking the right questions. You have community members and resources at the University of Virginia who can help. Some of our community members have the subject matter expertise to ask pointed questions to determine if this research is valid. I am not suggesting an open panel, but I am asking for you to consider allowing a resident or two who understand research and analysis to be part of this discussion, to be able to ask follow-on questions when they provide their research methodology. When I spoke last month, I said, let's not rush to failure. It is time we take a proactive approach and stop operating under reactive measures. It is time to develop a plan that we feel will work for the city and the school system, accommodating this expected growth. I understand a new school may not be necessarily viable this year or next year. During your future vote, I recommend that you do not approve of the Lafayette Upper Elementary School expansion and the capital improvement budget until we determine the correct growth projections. We need City Council and the school system to work together to determine viable options to allow for better space utilization to accommodate the students without spending millions of dollars on an expansion that may not work. We do not need a plan that we don't plan to follow. Instead, we need a long-range plan that we can follow to meet the needs of all children in our city schools. Please keep this in consideration as you move through the FY20 budget cycle. In addition, after hearing you tonight, since our composite
30
index
seconds.
is low and we need support for additional funds, can City Council at some point please share specifically what other angles have been attempted so we can reach out to our state representatives for support? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. James Tankersley?
Council members, Madam Mayor, Mr. Baruti, my name is James Tankersley. I live at 804 Charlotte Street. By now, I think City Council is aware that residents of Fredericksburg, parents and non-parents alike, are showing up and getting involved. We're paying attention to our schools and to City Council's role in funding them. Bear in mind, we're not only paying attention to City Council, but we are also paying attention to the school board as well, and we will hold them accountable as elected officials. I think that among many parents, there's a growing perception of administrative bloat in our school system. We intend to watch how they allocate their funds, particularly to teacher retention and student needs. The need for a new school in Fredericksburg is not recent news. City planning for a new school has been included in the capital improvement plan for a number of years. 2017, I've got it right here, funds for the study and design in 2020 and construction in 2021. I have the CIP from 2018. Bump both items out another year. I have the CIP for 2019. Now we're on the list, projects for future CIPs. So we're talking a new elementary school in the year 20XX. When is 2000XX? I think these people want to know. Now, I understand City Council's role is not to designate how the school board spends their funding. But this council holds the purse strings and has the ultimate say on whether the schools receive their needed funds. I implore you to fully fund the 2019 school budget in order to address growing student and staffing needs. Just tonight, Mr. Baruti spoke of, I think you said $75 million for water treatment infrastructure improvements. City leaders have known about this and a lot of other items like new roads, a new fire department for many years. Why haven't we saved for this? Why has this council not planned for this? I don't understand. I know if I need something new in my home, I have to plan for it. I can't just say, oh yeah, we're gonna need that next year or next year, and then when I need it, I don't have the money. So I think that 4 cents is not nearly enough to advertise. I don't think it's enough for the current budget. Another thing that came up tonight, the composite index. The Commonwealth of Virginia is not going to adjust the composite index. Mrs. Devine said it herself. She doesn't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. So I think the city needs to stop blaming the Commonwealth of Virginia, or the City Council needs to stop blaming the Commonwealth of Virginia and do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tankersley. Shane Riordan.
Good evening. Thank you for making time for us tonight. I just want to start out by foot stomping a lot of what my friends and colleagues have been saying tonight in regards to the funding of the schools and looking a little more closely at the Mosley report. I think these are great things to do. As someone else mentioned, a lot of us are learning this issue, as we go, and that's definitely me. I'm glad to be here and glad to be learning. I do want to start out with a few thank yous. First, to all of you on City Council for your continued service to our city, and to all the parents and supporters of our public schools who came out tonight. My name is Shane Reardon, and I am the parent of 2 children enrolled at Hugh Mercer. I'm a former public and private school teacher with over 10 years of experience, and in that role I have seen the negative effects of overcrowding and under-resourcing on kids' ability to learn. I have also seen the positive effects that adequate funding and facilities have on kids' ability to learn and experience success. Hugh Mercer faculty and staff do an amazing job with our kids. I volunteer there, as does my wife, and we are continually impressed with the good things being done there. However, we cannot continue to ask them to do a difficult job with fewer resources. We must provide well-funded schools with adequate space. I firmly believe that this is an essential element to creating and sustaining a diverse, vibrant, and economically resilient city. Well-funded schools attract families to the cities they serve. The performance of Hugh Mercer to date is a major reason that we have stayed here versus moving to one of the counties. If we want to continue to attract businesses. We need good schools. Diverse businesses create a differentiated economy that is more resilient to recessions or shutdowns. And it benefits more of our citizens. Diverse businesses will come from the innovation of the community, attracted by the schools, or will move here to be closer to the applicant pool and potential customers. There will always be competing priorities, such as sewer upgrades or fire departments, but I firmly believe that we can and should rack and stack these priorities. At the end of the day, the schools are the highest priority for me. If we have failing schools, then we have failed our kids. And we will drive off the taxpayers who we need to fund the rest of our vital infrastructure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the list of speakers who have signed up to speak before the meeting. Thank you all for coming and for listening. Item 7A is the first item on the council agenda. Does anyone else want to add anything to the council agenda? Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I have two items. I got 7B will be Dixon Street, Spotsylvania.
All right.
And 7C would be Slave Block.
All right. Anyone else? All right, item 7A is actually item 10A on your agenda. That is before us for a first read, approving a fiscal year budget amendment to provide funds to the Fredericksburg City Schools necessary to move Virginia Preschool Initiative children from Hugh Mercer Elementary to Walker Grant Center. And I'll call on Assistant City Manager, Mr. Whitley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. Item, I believe it's actually 10C, which is now 7A, is an item before council this evening to fund a request from the Fredericksburg City Schools to move the children enrolled in the Virginia Preschool Initiative, the VPI, preschool kids that are currently housed in Hugh Mercer Elementary over to the Walker Grant Center. As part of the conversations we've been having over the last, 6 weeks, couple months, one of the questions that came out was, could we and what would it take to move the VPI children over to Walker Grant Center? And the schools have done some research on that question. They've given us an answer. And I would note that Dr. Melton and Dr. Russ are here this evening, and I wanted to wave at them and thank them for coming. They're also here to answer any questions if we need questions, but the answer came back at $389,682, and we decided to take this on as an amendment to the 19 budget. So this is a current amendment. The item before you is on first read. It's a resolution amending the 19 budget. It does two things. The first section is $264,000 of general fund money to the school capital fund, and that would fund 3 additional buses. The second thing it does is it would move $125,682 to the school operating fund. This funding would not be used, obviously, this year because this plan would not take effect until August, or the next academic year, if you will. So what that would do is, because we haven't adopted the 2020 budget yet, that would become balance in the school budget that we would have to reappropriate in 2020. But the funding is available now, or would be if council considered this. So you could buy the buses now, and then in 2020 you would reappropriate that fund, those funds. So it is on for first reading. The source of funds, on some tax settlements in the prior year, we have revenue on interest payments on overdue tax payments in excess of the budget estimate for fiscal 19, and also from a delinquent tax sale, a settlement where proceeds were not collected after a period of time, I believe it's 2 years, those funds forfeit to the city. So we're using those two sources of funds. For this would enable the schools to then move the children over to the Walker Grant Center and free up a capacity of about 70 kids right now. I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, shout out to my colleagues, Dr. Russ and Dr. Melton as well.
Councilor Duffy?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I would just like to make a disclosure before we move any
yes.
further on this, that I am an employee of the Fredericksburg City Public Schools, proudly, and namely, I'm an assistant principal at James Monroe High School, and I can participate in this matter fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you.
Councilor Fry, you wish to make a disclosure?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. My disclosure is my spouse is an employee of the Fredericksburg Public School System. I am able to participate in this transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Graham, and then Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I see here that it says the fourth class will have to be taken from the early childhood special education program. I'm just reading the sheet that was given before us.
Oh, this is the letter we got tonight as
Yes,
we
from
sat
Dr.
down.
Melton. And so I'd like Dr. Melton, if you don't mind, to address that statement in the letter so that we can understand more clearly what will happen with the children who are enrolled in this program. I just want to make sure that we're not leaving some kids
There
out
are
in the cold.
currently 2 vacant classrooms at the Walker Grant Center. There is 1 classroom that's used for an elementary alternative education program also there that would be moved. And then the special education room that is mentioned in there is has some specialized equipment for students, so students aren't in there the entire time. So we'll be able to move that equipment out and put it into another room, which will clear 4 classrooms.
And we currently have adequate space to move that equipment into?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Graham. Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I want to start with saying that I think this move is necessary and will benefit all of our students with sort of that trickle-down effect. It'll give us more space at Hugh Mercer. Having said that, I guess I'd like to express that I'm disappointed, honestly, that the $12.5 million that was allocated for the renovation of the Walker Grant Center did not include space for housing all of the preschool children programs. I, for one, I guess in our early discussions about the changes, and I think others on council and in the community assumed that the move to Hugh Mercer was temporary during the renovation process and all the preschool programs would benefit from the newly designed and finished space. And that the Hugh Mercer students and teachers would not be made to deal with overcrowding issues that resulted from the VPI students being at Hugh Mercer. So I'm glad that we are addressing this issue. I think it's overdue. And I'll add by saying that I wish it had been a part of the planned budgeting process rather than an initiative brought to our attention by mostly the parents and staff at Hugh Mercer. So I find it unfortunate that in addition to the request that there's now another $300,000 request to solve a problem that I think didn't need to be a problem in the first place. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Councilor Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. I think we all are going to support this. Obviously, it is a move that needs to take place, and I agree. And this, I guess, for the superintendent, Dr. Melton, if you could, I've just got a quick question. When this came to the council, one of the points made was that by being able to take all the administrators out from all the different schools and bring them back to one place that would be freeing up space in the schools for other programs, can you give us a quick heads up on how that worked out?
Yes, just stay up here. So your question is, moving the students out of Hugh Mercer. What-
No, my question was, when this was brought to council initial discussion, one of
When you
the
say-
points made was we were going to be allowed the administrators to be pulled out of the schools and brought back to one location and to free up spaces in the other schools. From the
this-
administrators moving too. We're not talking just about the preschool issue, we're talking about
In the
administrators.
original plans for Walker Grant Center.
Yes, sir.
You're correct. We had administration spread across 4 buildings. It did free up some space at Hugh Mercer, but it wasn't classroom space. What will happen now is there are 2 classes in the auxiliary gym, so they'll be moved out, so the auxiliary gym will go back to an auxiliary gym. Clears up 4 classrooms at Hugh Mercer.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Withers?
I have just an easy question. How many students,
Your mic.
how many students are at the Walker Grant Annex now, roughly? You don't have to tell me exactly, just an idea.
I think it's close to 200.
Yeah, but it was brought up tonight that it was just being used as an office space, but it is also
Head
being
Start's
used.
there.
Yeah, so I just thought we'd clear that up. It's not just being used for office space, it's
No,
being
no,
used for
no.
both.
Those classrooms that were originally designed for that program.
I
are
knew
still
the answer, but I just wanted to bring it up because I didn't want people to have the impression that it was just used for office.
No.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Council Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. And Dr. Melton has, on the comment about alternative education at the elementary level, so if students are cleared out, so where would the alternative education kids go if they have to be relocated?
Well, we've been doing some renovation to the Walker Grant, original Walker Grant across the street. So there's classroom space there.
Okay.
And it's a very, very small program.
Okay.
Less than a half dozen students.
All right. And that's like music to my ears on that one, because we've been having these discussions over the years. So just to hear that anything is happening, and this could be just a whole nother side note real quick, to hear that anything is happening to make the original Walker Grant better. I don't care if we strip the floors and wax them out. I mean, it's a part of Fredericksburg's history, so that's just a whole nother story.
You need to come look at what we've done.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Well, thank you.
Any further questions? Before we take the first vote, I'll ask either our attorney or our city manager, is it possible to do both votes tonight, both reads on this, or is it a matter of,
Don't see any problem with
Would
suspending
not
the
be,
rules and
if
doing
the
second read.
council so wishes, it would be possible to suspend the rules and do both reads tonight.
Madam Mayor, I move first read approving a fiscal year FY 2019 budget amendment to provide funds to the Fredericksburg City Public Schools necessary to move Virginia Preschool Initiative children from Hugh Mercer Elementary School to the Walker Grant Center.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Council Fry.
Over
here.
I ate the wrong button.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, move second read approving fiscal year FY 2019 budget amendment to provide funds to the Fredericksburg City Public Schools necessary to move Virginia Preschool Initiative children from Hugh Mercer Elementary School to the Walker Grant Center.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Does any counselor wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to remove item 8D, the resolution supporting the Smart Scale Round 3 project changes from the consent agenda.
All righty.
Yeah, you're not finished the council agenda yet?
I'm not, oh my goodness, thank you. Vice Mayor's keeping me straight tonight. We have 2 more items on the council agenda that I did not call on. I apologize, Councilor Fry. Item 7B, Dixon Street.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I have some, which I feel is good news tonight, but the city has no part in it. And it's the first time I ever gave Spotsylvania credit for anything, but I'm going to do it tonight. On Dixon Street, close to the Mayfield neighborhood at the edge of the city on that other side of town. We have so many borders that have so much action going on, like Lafayette, for instance, and Route 1, where the car dealerships are, and we don't get any tax revenue. You know, all of those areas. But on the fairground side of the city, close to Lansdowne Road, which of course is Mayfield, and it's the opposite side of the city. And across the street, I never thought I'd be happy about a fast food place. So they have a Hardee's that's coming to that side of town, and it's like an amazing addition. And it's not for me to promote or try to get a free biscuit or nothing, but it's but I do go there with my son every morning. I will make that disclaimer. I go there every morning for his chicken biscuit on the way to school. But we're getting that on that side of town, and the reason why I'm saying it tonight is it's right on the line. It's right in front of the Bowman Center. Right, Dixon Street turns into, I don't know if it switches over Tidewater Trail, but my point is, right there on Dixon Street, the road divides and it turns into Spotsylvania County, and that's even entering the neighborhood. So Spotsylvania County owns that road right there. So I'm saying this because it's anything on that side of town is great, anything new, and especially in a primarily minority community that had nothing for years besides a 7-Eleven. And we had to fight to put a sidewalk and a crosswalk within the last couple of years just to get the kids a safe place to go get a Slurpee. So real issues really happen in the city, you know, and I blame these corporations on neglect. And it's like sometimes the reality is the minority dollar is not respected. And it's okay for 400 folks to leave their neighborhood and travel when other folks have the amenities placed right at them. And it's a reality. And if you have the lower income neighborhoods and so on and so forth, which a lot of people are talking about tonight, the resources are also low. And the amenities are not there. And it makes it more difficult for folks to participate in normal things. So I have to give props tonight to Spotsylvania County for obviously recognizing that there was a value. Nobody does anything if they can't make $1. Okay, that's cut and dry. But the traffic and everything that comes along on Route 2 obviously has been recognized by somebody, and I haven't communicated with whoever was responsible or whatever the case, but just on that note, there's a need. And like I said, a restaurant, yeah, right. I would be sitting here saying thanks for a restaurant, but it's a big deal. It's really a big deal. Kids can walk to work if they get a job. Whatever the case, everybody probably had their first job in a fast food place, but it's going to be a great addition to the city of Fredericksburg, but it's just happened to be right on the line. So I just had to throw that out there, and that was what I was getting to when we were discussing the 7-Eleven in Bragg Hill about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I was disappointed that 7-Eleven was in Bragg Hill, which is also in my ward. I was disappointed that 7-Eleven in Bragg Hill operated for 30 plus years on the backs of those minorities. But when something greater moved up the street near Wegmans and so on and so forth, then there was a need for folks to want to rebuild and move up the street. That 7-Eleven was closed down in a minority neighborhood, and it's the reality of what happened. And it's all about numbers. So where do the numbers come in when you don't reinvest into your community? When a business runs for 30 years, but you don't put a sidewalk up. It makes absolutely no sense. And I'm glad that I'm able to see some progression. We're not getting things in certain areas, and that's a reality. But I will say that what Spotsylvania did is great. So I had to take this moment tonight, Mayor Greenlaw. And let's see what happens. I know we have small area plans and so on and so forth for the future, but on Dixon Street, you have four, for instance, there 7-Eleven over there, just so folks know, we're talking about taxes tonight. So you have 400 houses in one neighborhood that go to Spotsylvania County for gas due to the fact that the gas pumps were taken out of the neighborhood. So we're talking tonight about revenue. but we're giving it away almost voluntarily. So I hope that these small area plans and so on and so forth in the future, we get to detail some of this stuff. And we need to capture our own money. Lafayette Boulevard, Old Greenwich, there's a border right there. How do we redevelop that area? How do we put something great near Paul's Bakery? Everybody goes there already. How do we get something over there that's worth the folks there not crossing that line? We have to hold on to our own money, because what we're going to do now, something that could have been done on one side of the street, we're going to give all our money away. I will enjoy the biscuit, but we're giving our money away. All right, and that's all I have on that. And I look forward to, I spoke to Mr. Fawcett and Mr. King earlier. I look forward to talking to Public Works on what we need to do when it comes to the street crossing, because it's going to be a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic. So I look forward to having that conversation, even if it comes with a budget item saying, hey, we need this over here. I'll be happy to fight for that. So sorry for rambling on, but it's a real deal, and I watched it happen all my life. So it's okay to take money from folks but not reinvest in those folks, and I think it's a shame. And there's plenty of developers out here who say they're doing the greatest thing for everybody. That's not true. It's totally not true. And why not have this kid, that wants their new bike or wants to buy his first car, why not have him walk across the street and get a job like everybody else has the opportunity to in where they live at? So it's that big of a deal. Never thought I'd be a spokesperson for Hardee's, but that's what it is, Mayor Greenlaw.
Thank you, Councilor Fry. You also have item 7C.
Thank you. I think the city manager, has this in his piece for tonight. We have a special meeting on Thursday.
This Thursday.
This Thursday, the 14th. Special meeting for the firm to come back in and discuss the end of the slave block report for what's been going on that the city's been doing for the last, feels like a year. But I just want to publicly say, without going into too much detail, tune in on Thursday or listen to the report about the slave block and about what has been going on in the city, about history in the city. That's why I mentioned earlier about the original Walker Grant, the other Walker Grant. That's why I mentioned that whatever they do down there is great, because if anything that's done to the original Walker Grant, no matter whose budget item it is, if it's ours, it's the school board, whoever, whatever we do to preserve anything in that school, I don't care if it's a brick, you need to save it. We advertise ourselves as the most historic city in America, and we're going to let a school fall apart pretty much if we don't focus in on that school. And then at the end of the day, we'll have a school that went away in the flood, and we'll say that used to be Walker Grant. And every locality has a African-American school that was taken over by the locality after after the Civil Rights era. Let me say that, just leave it at that. So the schools were left, and then they're in shambles. Then they're used for other things for localities, and it's our job to preserve them. And if we're the most historic city in America, like we advertised, then we have to preserve it. And the only way to take care of that business is we take care of it to where even when the trolley tours or whoever, we go do the bike tours, they want to pedal and drink beer, learn about the city, whatever it is, it needs to be a stop. Everybody in this room needs to know about original Walker Grant and the significance it is to the city and the history part. But get back to my point about the slave auction block, is just to publicly say that this is coming up Thursday here. So tune in and listen. And there's possibility we'll see how the wind blows at the 26th, at the next council meeting. There may be some action on the slave block. Who knows? But I'm putting that out there now. Last time, I publicly stated that on whichever day that the item was coming up for action, and a lot of folks seem to throw 10 rumors around the city that it wouldn't be up for action, and it went up for action, and people approached me and said, well, that was fast. No, it wasn't fast. It was publicly announced that it was going to happen. So I'm saying it tonight So whoever's paying attention, if folks are not, it is what it is. But on the 26th, it may come back for action. And this is my only outlet to say that, Mayor Greenlaw, besides knocking on doors, but I got to go to work in the morning. So, but long story short, I will say to the council that the action that we took as a council to let this process take place is a big deal. And obviously it's going to open up some doors for how we tell the story of African-American history. I didn't think, it's not Black History Month, I didn't think I'd be talking about this much tonight, but it's going to open up the door for a more futuristic conversation about the history of Fredericksburg, the whole story. And I'm going to do my part to make sure that when we tell a story, that the African-American story doesn't start with the slave block, because that's the absolute worst way you can start the story. Because when you started with the slave block, it's pretty much going to end with the slave block. That's my opinion only. But I can't wait to see. We've already received some information about different things that happened in the city. And, excuse me, I'm getting dry mouth. But I'm personally, I'm tired of hearing stories about the educated slave who was taught to read. And it was like he was the good slave. What about the rest of them? You know, so we have to tell a story about the reality of what really happened here. It's going to hurt. It is what it is, but we have to tell a story. So if it's up to us to write the stories of what happened in small town America, then it's our job to write it. If it's us as a council, then we'll get a snippet in a book somewhere. We have to tell it. So thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, and now we can proceed.
Thank you, Councilor Fry. The meeting to which Councilor Fry is talking about is a special meeting to receive the final report of the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, who have spent the better part of a year listening and compiling the thoughts of many citizens around not just the auction block, but the history of African Americans in this city and the relationships. So I do think the report will have a number of recommendations for us to consider, and we certainly have learned a lot about ourselves, and hopefully we'll do a better job of telling our history in the future as a result of this. So that's the meeting to which Councilor Fry referred. Now we can go to the consent agenda, and Councilor Graham wants to pull item 8D.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda, pulling item D.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 8D, supporting the Smart Scale Round 3 project changes. Councilor Graham, you had some questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like for Mr. Nelson to explain a little bit more about what these improvements or proposed improvements are, and also to explain the funding mechanism, just so everyone can be aware, because with the budget season coming up, I think, you know, with the numbers that are going to be thrown out, some people might have some questions about that if we don't address that tonight, and I would just would really like to hear Mr. Nelson explain this in a little bit more detail for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Madam Mayor, members of council, before I start, you should know that when staff gets up here, Tanya turns this on, just to aggravate us.
No green and red lights for you.
What we have is a, you said D, 8D, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This was a project that was submitted in a previous round for Smart Scale for a park and ride lot in Stafford County. It was submitted by Fred, which does these kinds of regional things, just to get these into the process and hopefully get them funded. This one was successful, but it turns out that Stafford County would just as soon not have that park and ride lot there. And so we have the opportunity to take those funds and potentially repurpose them. So there's a collection of 3 projects, that one in each jurisdiction, Stafford, Spotsylvania, and the city. But because the city was the initial applicant, technically because Fred is a city agency, the VDOT doesn't want to proceed with this and take it to the Commonwealth Transportation Board unless the city is in fact on board with this. So the idea is to, we in effect are telling the state that we're okay with this project being removed from consideration and we fully support these other projects that are moving forward. Our particular project is the ramp improvements on the I-95 northbound coming to Route 3. And these relate to the Gateway Boulevard project, which is going to have some intersection improvements necessary at Route 3. The issue is that the ramp needs to be pushed to the west as far as possible so that people coming off I-95 have a little bit more room on Route 3 to, if they need to turn left onto the new Gateway Boulevard, that they would have enough room to be able to do that. So it's a safety measure. This is, again, it's related to the Gateway Boulevard project, but it's a project that can occur at any time, really. And it works as a standalone project. It relates to Gateway Boulevard. The funding mechanism is $3 million already in place, reserved for the city in RSTP money, which is Regional Surface Transportation Program money, which is very flexible. And then VDOT is going to make up the difference with another $1.1 million for the total price tag of $4.1 million. So there's no city money involved. There's funds, state funds that were reserved for city use. So this is we think, a very good use of these funds to get a very important component of the overall network completed, so that as we continue to pursue Gateway Boulevard funding, this component will have already been done. So we think it's a good project.
All right, well, thank you very much. I wanted to make sure I understood the safety concerns around it and not just that it was a road expansion.
Right. No, there's no additional capacity. It's a configuration to, again, make it safer.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
I could have said that
Thank you.
at first.
Councilor Kelly?
Hey, Eric, quick question, because I didn't, you know what, I should know this and I didn't look before I came here. That project was scored in the last round of Smart Scale. Was that a district project or was that a statewide significant project?
I believe it was district. Ours, the Gateway?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the project that got funded, which is the Fred project. I think that was statewide, wasn't it? That was not district funds?
I couldn't tell you that.
Okay, because here's I'm going to support this. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what this really means from a overall funding standpoint. We submitted a project, understanding this last round, you had under $500 million, a little over $500 million for projects of statewide significance, roughly just under 500 million for what are called district projects, which is formulaic for the districts. And you had roughly 10 to 12 billion dollars of projects that were submitted for funding. This is not just a simple, oh, by the way, we submitted this project, we don't want it anymore, CTB, take it off the list, and by the way, we want you to spend the money over here. There is the possibility the CTB says, well, fine, we're not going to fund it, but we've got other priorities in other parts of the state, and that money is going to go flying,
Right.
or just go back into the pot. Frankly, Fred, and we do need more commuter lots in the region. It's just there is a view that some people feel that it's more important to build asphalt and not build parking lots. We can have a discussion on that on a later day, but the Stafford Board has expressed their angst about it. So I have no problem moving forward, but the reality is, yeah, we can ask, and either CTB can say no, or the CTB can say, well, we don't want these little projects, we'll just go ahead and we've got another project we can fully fund in Southwest Virginia, and that's where the money's going. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, do we have this is a resolution requiring one vote. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the resolution supporting the Smart Scale Round 3 project changes.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Appreciate that. We have two sets of minutes before us, the public hearing of February 26th and the regular session of February 26th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
The city manager's agenda, item 10A. I'll call upon Mr. Fawcett.
Thank you, Mayor. As was referenced earlier during the, by Mr. Small during the public session, public comments, this proposal is to authorize the chief of police to void parking citations issued to those serving on a circuit court jury in the city for violation of time restrictions. It would not permit him to void citations for such things as parking in front of a fire hydrant or too close to an intersection or in a crosswalk or blocking a driveway. This simply, it relates to the 2-hour time restrictions in the vicinity of the courthouse. The chief is willing to do this, but has determined, and I think everybody's agreed, that he doesn't have affirmative statutory authority to do it. We did take this to the Parking Advisory Committee in February, and the committee voted 6-1 to recommend to City Council that this authority be given to the police chief. And in recognition of the hour, I'll stop there and just simply answer any questions any council member may have.
Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that based on past experience, this would be a loss of about $400 to $500 in revenue.
Yes, in calendar 18, the chief avoided 17 such tickets, and so the revenue is he estimated the revenue loss in between $400 and $500 annually, if those tickets had been paid as issued.
Right. Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess wanted to double check that the spaces would be 2-hour spaces, 2 or more hour spaces, and not the 20-minute spaces in front of City Hall.
Yes.
That's certainly the intent. I'm not sure that it specifically says that. We really don't have problems with jurors parking in the 20-minute spaces because I think they pretty much know when they go into court they're going to be there more than 20 minutes. It's the 2-hour spaces in the block of the courthouse and the block of the post office, primarily where we have these issues.
Yes, I guess I'm just concerned that
We protect that, yeah.
that the 20-minute spaces where people we have them designated for people to, run in and out of City Hall to pay a bill or check with somebody. My only concern is that those spaces might be taken up for an entire day if someone's chosen for jury duty. I don't have any problem with other part of it, but I just didn't know how to designate the 20-minute spaces are not available at that time.
Logistically, it's
Can
very
I say,
difficult to if somebody's reporting for jury duty. I think it would be I understand what you're saying, but it would be difficult to say to a juror, you parked in a 2-hour space, you were inside 4 hours, the police chief's going to avoid your citation, but if you parked in a 20-minute space and was inside for an hour and a half, he doesn't have the authority to do that. I think that becomes a really fine distinction to try to impose.
I guess, I know that jurors are provided with a letter that it explains where parking is available.
Yes.
And I guess if we can make every effort to encourage jurors to park in a spot that is at least designated a 2-hour spot, or
Yes,
I say 2-hour or more because I know we changed the parking rules around the holidays and things like that, but to prohibit them from parking in a 20-minute spot.
I think that's possible. That seems reasonable. Councilor Kelly?
Seeing we're going to have a very interesting budget discussion, I've got a way to save this $400 and make it somewhat revenue neutral. We start ticketing the sheriff's department's vehicle who keeps parking in the public parking, leaving their designated spaces in front of the courthouse wide open. So if we could pass that on, that would be great. Is there anything we can do with the sheriff's department on, they have certain spaces they got to use and they're never using them, and then we're sitting here with spaces being taken up by sheriff's vehicles. So start ticketing the sheriffs when they're not parking in their designated spaces.
Oh my gosh. Councilor Graham. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess maybe in relation to both of your comments, I would like no, I'd actually like to ask, in the memorandum for item 10A, it was noted that the auto chalk technology can provide that warning. Is it correct to say that the auto chalk technology actually knows the time limit for the individual spaces? Because otherwise, how would it know if someone is in violation of that requirement? And if it does know those time limits, then I think with Councilor Devine's question, we might be able to adjust the auto chalk technology so that it can tell, oh, well, this space is a 20-minute space, because otherwise, how would it know when a violation has been committed?
Any ticket that the auto chalk determines should be issued has to be reviewed by a police officer, and that's when the 20-minute versus 2-hour distinction would come in. The officer, the technology shows where the vehicle is parked, but the officer has to apply his or her knowledge as to whether that's a 20-minute space or a 2-hour space to determine if a ticket should be issued. So first of all, I don't believe we use the auto chalk technology much to do the 20-minute enforcement, simply because the routes for the auto chalk vehicles are not 20-minute cycles. So if the auto chalk is catching a vehicle that's been in a 20-minute space more than 20 minutes, that space most likely has been occupied by that same vehicle for over 2 hours, simply because the areas that are enforced with the auto chalk technology are such that the cycle is much longer than a 20-minute cycle. But if the auto chalk were to, say, right in front of City Hall, ping, for lack of a better term, on a vehicle that says it was there at 8:45, it's there again at 10:15, then it would be the police officer that would say, okay, that justifies a citation because that's a 20-minute space. To my knowledge, the technology itself does not make that distinction.
Okay.
I would add one other thing, since the discussion's kind of going this direction, and that is, remember, first citations for violation of timed parking restrictions downtown get a warning letter. So the vast majority of even jurors or everybody else that comes downtown and parks what triggers the enforcement is going to get a here's the picture of your vehicle parked here at this time. This is your warning. If it happens again, stated nicely, you'll start getting an actual fine. And the significant majority of all of our downtown parking tickets are that first warning, because a lot of folks don't come downtown frequently enough and park in violation of the time restrictions, whether in a 20-minute zone or a 2-hour zone, to proceed past that first warning.
All right. Councilor Fry, and then Vice Mayor Withers, and then Councilor Devine.
All right.
Wow.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I didn't want to talk this much tonight. I guess I probably say that every meeting. Can we add this I agree with what we're doing with this tonight, so I'll be in agreement with it, once we vote. But can we add this to maybe a work session item for the future, maybe after budget season, and discuss court parking or juror parking, and maybe see if we have any, or is it, that's if council agrees. I don't know if we can add as a work session item to discuss maybe further other options that maybe we haven't talked about as a council.
Mr. Baroudi?
Madam Mayor, we'd be happy to schedule a future work session after the budget on this very topic. We've had a lot of conversation about it, and be happy to share our thoughts on the topic.
Okay. So whether there are other options. Vice Mayor Withers?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that we approve first read on permitting this chief of police or his designee to void parking citations issued for time zone violations to persons serving jury duty in the city, in the Fredericksburg Circuit Court.
Second.
Is there further discussion? Did anyone else have
Just
further comment? Councilor Kelly?
I can't resist this, and I apologize to some of my colleagues, but I want to thank Councilor Fry for bringing up a discussion about the parking around the courthouse that we probably should have had years ago before we finished building the courthouse. Thank you.
All righty. Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't really intend to launch a big discussion. I would just like to see us add to the motion wording to the effect that the 20-minute spaces would not be part of the permitted spaces for jurors.
I'd be happy to do that. I'm just not sure we'll be able to enforce it, but I'll be happy
Well,
to do that.
again, I think
Yeah,
the jurors get a letter.
Okay.
And I understand, we do issue a warning. It's a lovely letter. I've gotten one. But they might not get the letter if they're there for successive days. So they might not get a letter in the mail prior to them if it's a 2 or 3 day trial. All I ask is that we try to reserve the spaces in front of City Hall for the people in town who need to do quick business at City Hall. That's all.
I guess I'll accept that if we think it's legal that we can do that. I mean, can we ask the chief of police, as Mr. Fawcett said, to forgive one ticket but not another? I don't know. Maybe we could get some help from the city attorney.
Madam Mayor, I don't see a problem about that from a legal perspective. One space is marked for 20 minutes and the other space is marked for 2 hours.
Okay.
Yep. And jurors could be told not to park in the 20-minute spaces.
Okay, so I'll take that as a friendly amendment. May I say one more thing before we vote? I think it's not a bad idea to have a work session on this, but I can tell you that staff in the parking committee have gone over almost every option, including tickets, free tickets to the parking garage. None of these things have worked. So, I mean, we can talk about it all we want, but I can tell you that it's been soaped and soaped and soaped, and there's really
Simple
no
fact
answer.
of the matter is, when somebody wants to go somewhere, they're going to park in the closest spot.
Right. So.
It's that
Okay.
simple. Mr. Fawcett?
Thank you.
Mayor, I apologize if I'm out of line, but including the 20 minutes concerns me, and I would rather council postpone action on this tonight than to add the 20-minute parking. The reality is, if a juror arrives downtown at 8:28 a.m. and is required by the court to be in court at 8:30 a.m., they're going to park where they can park. And the reality is, if they get a parking ticket after being in court for 4 or 5 hours and take it to either Mr. Small or directly to Judge Willis, the expectation of the court will be that the citation will be excused. I would like to be able to say that it would be different from a 20-minute space versus a 2-hour space, but that would not be the reality. And as Mr. Withers said, I was a young man when I started looking at juror parking. And so I would rather the council postpone action until we can have some more discussion offline and let us bring it back to you at your next meeting with some recommendations, as opposed to doing the proposed amendment this evening, and that would be my recommendation.
All right, what does council want to do?
I withdraw the motion.
And does the seconder has to agree with withdrawing the motion also? Okay. Whomever seconded it. All righty. Okay. We will not vote on this tonight. We will receive further information. All right. Okay. Item 10B. I will call upon Mr. King and we're going to talk about streets
Yes.
and paving and
paving
potholes.
And potholes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members of council. Yes, moving from paving or potholes and parking to paving. You may recall that on August 28th of last year, the City Council adopted a list of streets to be included in the FY19 paving program. Staff subsequently solicited bids for that program, and on February 21st, we received a total of 6 bids. The low bid was received from Fredericksburg Asphalt and Paving in the amount of $1,809,232. The funding for the FY19 program comes from 2 sources. It comes from the city's funds and also from VDOT funds. For the city funds, which total $918,780,000, this amount covers, actually it exceeds the amount needed to pave what we've designated as our locally funded streets. For the VDOT, there are 2 VDOT streets to be funded, or 2 streets in the city to be funded through the VDOT funds, and those are Lafayette Boulevard from the Blue-Gray Parkway to Sophia Street, and we call it the Dixon Street project, but it's the northbound lanes of Dixon Street from the Hazel Run Bridge to Caroline Street, and it also includes the section of Caroline Street from Dixon Street to Lafayette Boulevard. That's what we call the Dixon Street project. The funds from VDOT total $744,659, and that is unfortunately less than the amount that was included in the bid for those 2 streets. So we have some options to resolve that difference. One of the options which staff is currently working on is coordinating with VDOT to find additional funds to allocate toward those streets. If funds are identified from VDOT, then we will program those funds into the project budget to accommodate the full scope of those 2 streets. Another option is for us to take the savings that we typically recognize through our unit cost as we pave the local streets and reappropriate that to these 2 streets, the Lafayette Boulevard and Dixon Street projects, to accommodate the shortfall. The third option would be to take a combination of both of those. If we can find some VDOT money and allocate that, and also take some of the savings from the other streets and pull those together to make ends meet to cover those 2 streets. The last option would be if we're unable to find sufficient funds to pay those 2 streets, then we will work with VDOT to just reduce the scope of those streets to bring them back inside the budget for those 2 streets. The bottom line to all of that is that we will not proceed with a program that exceeds the allocation or the budget for those streets. We will make sure that the contract stays within, or the scope of the project stays within the fund allocations. Fredericksburg Asphalt has been awarded the annual paving contract for many years, and staff has been very satisfied with the work that they have performed. We look forward to working with them again. And with that, staff is seeking approval of item 10B, authorizing the city manager to execute the fiscal year 2019 asphalt rehabilitation program contract with Fredericksburg Asphalt and Paving. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not an expert on asphalt paving, but I want to ask a question before I make my comment. What time frame should we expect a paving job to last before it needs to be redone again?
I would say typically, if the work is done properly, at least somewhere between 30 and 40 years.
Okay, the reason I bring that up is, okay, Stafford Avenue was redone well within that time frame. It is already gatered, potholed, and we can talk about the multiple patches all over the place. Stafford Avenue, frankly, is a mess again of the first order. So I guess my question is, and I'm not pointing out any particular who did it or anything else like that, I was just wondering if we have anything in our contracts that says if things start going wrong within a certain period of time, and I know Doug's getting ready to hit me with, well, we had bad weather and everything else like that, and I got that. We've had this discussion every year we do this. But some of these roads that were repaved just seem to, potholes and stuff, I'm gonna give Doug those, okay, potentially. All right, Doug. But some of the gatoring and stuff on these roads and things is just really beyond, I mean, beyond the pale as far as I can tell. And I'm just wondering, do we have anything in our contracts that basically said, if this thing starts going south within a certain period of time, you guys got to come back and fix it? Because again, Stafford Avenue needs to be totally redone again. I don't think anybody would question that.
Well, I'll be happy to start, and Mr. Foster can add any comments that I might miss on it. There are, to my knowledge, there are no warranties that any asphalt company will give beyond a 1-year warranty, typically for asphalt paving. So if it falls apart even within 10 years or so, typically that's going to be well outside the warranty for that. Staff typically tries to do a good job of inspecting roadways and determining the level of work necessary to pave streets throughout the city, so that when we write the specifications for the bids, that the bidders know what they're actually bidding on and the work that they're expected to do on the various streets in our program. There have been times, and Mr. Foster can correct me if I'm misstating anything here, but there have been times where we have attempted to stretch our paving budget as far as we can, and sometimes maybe pushing the envelope a little bit to get the most amount of roads paved in the city with the budget that we have. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case, but sometimes something like Stafford Avenue, we may have pushed a little bit too far to where we probably should have reconstructed some areas of that street. And in a lot of what is actually in tonight's program is a lot of reconstruction work, which means digging not only through the top layer of asphalt, but digging beyond that into the base of the roadway itself and adding new base material into the roadway, so that we're basically rebuilding the entire sub-base and base and surface asphalt of those roadways, because these streets that are in the list now are so bad that we feel fairly strongly that that's the work that needs to be done.
No, you guys, I understand that. You guys have done a great job, and when I came on council, the great thing for city council to do and running for campaigns and saying, wow, we recovered 99 streets in the city, and you guys kept hammering on us that, just putting asphalt on top doesn't work. And under Doug's stewardship, we fully understood that now we're going to have to go back and rebuild all these roads from the base up. And I appreciate it, and we needed to do that, and thank you for pushing us in that direction. But again, there have been some roads that have been done, and within a short period of time, they've gone south. And I was just wondering what our recourse is in dealing with that. That's all. Doug, I know you've traditionally chime in at this moment.
Yeah, I think I'll say the same thing I say every year. Stafford Avenue is an anomaly. As Dave has already said, first of all, I apologize, Dave, for disagreeing with you in public, but you're only going to get 30 years out of a very low traffic residential street. A street with a road, for example, a Caroline Street, you might get 15 or 18 years. A Stafford Avenue, maybe 20. But Dave's a bit more of an optimist than I am, and we have streets in the city that we soon will need to resurface for the third time during my tenure here. So it varies widely, and it's based on weather, it's based on daily traffic. But speaking specifically to Stafford, as Dave said, whenever the staff is evaluating streets, then there's kind of an either-or decision made. And the either-or is, can we simply resurface this street at a cost of X, or do we have to completely rebuild this street at a cost of probably 2.5 times X? And in Stafford, it was marginal when we did it a few years ago, and we concluded that we could simply resurface, and that proved to be an incorrect decision. We were wrong. I won't get defensive and say that 85 or 90% of the streets in the city have either been rebuilt or resurfaced in the last 20 years, and Stafford clearly is the bad one that sticks out. But there are a few others, is all I would say. We do, on the issue of standards, We do have standards. We do take the temperature of the asphalt. We do tests at the plant as the asphalt comes out of the plant. We do tests for the composition of the asphalt. There are compaction standards for the compaction of the if we do completely rebuild the road. There are compaction standards for the base asphalt underneath the asphalt, for the stone even under the base asphalt. So yes, there are a number of checkpoints during the way in which we attempt to make sure that the application of the asphalt meets all standards. But it's not a perfect system, and Stafford Avenue is kind of the one example that sticks out. I'm as dissatisfied with the current condition of Stafford as you are. It should be in much better condition based on its age, the age that it was last resurfaced.
I would like, good.
You want to add to that?
Well, I'll defer.
Go
to
ahead,
Mr.
Vice Mayor Withers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Fawcett answered my question about the temperature, taking the temperatures. Y'all are pretty strict with that, with temperatures on the asphalt as it's being laid?
Tim Ennis is responsible for that, and you know Mr. Ennis and know that he is extremely strict.
Okay, thank you.
His hobby is being hard on contractors.
Good.
So,
because you know how important that is, the heat of the
it is.
asphalt.
That's probably the single most important factor in laying asphalt. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. King.
I just wanted to tag on to what Mr. Fawcett said, and he is absolutely right that there is a difference between the low-volume streets and the high-volume streets throughout the city as far as longevity of the asphalt paving surface. And in fact, one of the streets that are in the program this evening, I think, has been paved probably within the last 10 to 15 years, which is Carl D. Silver Parkway. And that road has a lot of traffic on it, an extreme amount of traffic. And that is one of the streets that we're repaving as part of this program.
Exactly.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'll end our annual event and make the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the fiscal year 2019 asphalt rehabilitation program contract with Fredericksburg Asphalt and Paving.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All righty, and item 10D, I will call upon Mr. Vreeling.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. We spoke with you earlier this evening about our recommendation to extend the Regional Tourism Memorandum of Understanding for 1 year in order to provide sufficient time to conduct and consider an analysis of the city's and region's tourism operation. Following the results of the planned tourism study, which will likely be by early this fall, we'll have a substantive public conversation about the future of our tourism operation. At that time, we could ask you to enter into a longer-term MOU or potentially recommend other alternatives. For now, we ask you simply to renew the current MOU as is through June 30th of 2020. The boards of supervisors of both Stafford and Spotsylvania counties are being asked to take the same measure. And certainly I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, as are my colleagues Danelle Rose and Victoria Matthews, whom you also heard from earlier this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Vreeling? We appreciate the presentation we had earlier at our work session. This is a resolution requiring one vote.
Madam Mayor, I'll move resolution renewing the memorandum of understanding with the Fredericksburg Regional Tourism Partnership for 1 year.
Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 10E, Mr. Vreeling.
All right. Good evening again, Madam Mayor. It's been a long time. As you know, we've now been meeting for several months with City Council, the EDA, and the principals of Liberty Place Partners in Williams Square. We now have a proposal before you that we believe would jumpstart an extremely exciting 2-block project at the Williams Street gateway to our historic downtown. These 2 projects would generate significant new tax revenue, jobs, parking infrastructure, and more for the city. Liberty Place Partners is a project of WAC General Contractor, while Williams Square is a Vacos Company's project. Both are highly regarded and locally owned contractors and developers. We are delighted for their interest in the city, and we are excited for what is to come. Liberty Place Partners is now under contingent contract to sell an acre of its property to Williams Square, which would build an adjacent garage that provides 124 parking spaces to Liberty Place. Liberty Place Partners would build a 43,000 roughly square foot commercial building on the 0.42 acres it would retain on the William Street side of the property. That building would include 2 levels of office space and 1 level of restaurant and retail space. Tenants include Mellow Mushroom, Cary Street Partners, Union Bank and Trust, Burger Batch, Blue Cow Ice Cream, and Pasta Fresca, and there's more tenants that are in the works. To facilitate this project and make it financeable, the city is being asked to provide a financial incentive to Liberty Place Partners of $375,000 a year for 10 years if annual revenue from the commercial building is at least $400,000 a year. We see this as passing the but-for incentive test, as the Liberty Place project, as currently envisioned, wouldn't happen but for the incentive. The projected annual local tax revenue from the Liberty Place commercial building is $850,000, and the current tax revenue from the entire property is $25,000, roughly. So the city could net $450,000 more a year just from the Liberty Place commercial building than it is currently getting from the entire Liberty Place property, even after paying the incentive. After 10 years, the incentive would end and the city would keep all the tax revenue from Liberty Place. This new revenue would represent more than a penny on the tax rate, thereby providing a critical source of new revenue for the city. The Williams Square project, which would now be an acre bigger, would generate additional significant tax revenue. More on that project is to come in the coming months. Before you tonight is a proposed letter of intent between the City of Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg EDA, and Liberty Place Partners, LLC. Our recommendation is for council to authorize the city manager to enter into this LOI. Should this occur, in about a month, we will bring back additional action items that would lead to the unwinding of the 2017 agreement and a new performance agreement with Liberty Place Partners, LLC. The EDA yesterday agreed to enter into this LOI contingent on City Council's approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'd also like to recognize that Tom and Kathy Wack are here as well if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Vreeling? This has been a matter of a lot of work and a lot of consideration, and I might add a hefty investment in our city by 2 very fine developers, and we appreciate it very much. It's not often we get an opportunity to redevelop, attractively redevelop 2 entire city blocks in a strategic location. So this is a great opportunity for the city. Vice Mayor Withers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'd like to vote on authorizing the city manager to execute a letter of intent with Liberty Place Partners, LLC, and Fredericksburg Economic Development Authority.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'll call on Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor. I just want to add my sense of this. I appreciate all the work that's been done. Mr. Freeling has been described to me as a bulldog on these types of things, and I appreciate all the work that's put into it. It's gone through lots of iterations, there's no doubt. There are some things we hoped for, some things we worked for that might not materialize, but I'll say that, as the mayor said, the chance to really revitalize that entryway along that corridor into something that is going to really add to the vitality of the city. And you know, we talked a lot about, in today's work session, about the things that the city needs to make itself distinctive and that can really take advantage of market needs. And these 2 projects, which by their agreement has really become one, you know, I'm fully supportive of it, and we'll vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I just want to make a note to the public that we really do things that bring revenue here at this council. So I just want to throw that out there. And you might see a vote tonight. It didn't happen based on what Mr. Freeland just did, just by reading it and telling us what was going on. This has been a long process. And if you ask anybody or you see Mr. Wack around town, ask him, he'll tell you it's been a process and it's been a lot of work. So, you know, the public doesn't get to see a lot of this, and our work sessions are public, and a lot of folks don't show up, so they don't know. But I just want to say, you know, we are obviously in tune to, you know, what's best for the city and how things can make it better and also get some revenue in, and it's part of it. But like I said, a lot of the folks, I might make it to a couple work sessions a little bit late sometimes, but we do discuss this stuff. So I just want to throw that out there.
Councilor Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Most of the discussions have been executive session, which would not be open to the public. Not against the projects. I'm really looking forward to seeing what DeVaco's put forward, and I'm not against the WAC project itself. Not against using incentives, and I understand the need for incentives, especially in the downtown area. If you're redeveloping a building, the costs down there are much higher than most other places. I can understand that. I have an issue with this particular deal for a number of reasons. Number one, FACO's secured their property there, and they have a number of lots. I think they briefed everybody well before now on what their plans are and how they will probably move forward on that, which will be a discussion for another day. So to say these two are conjoined because of the parking issue is, whether we do this or not and it falls through, they're still going to move forward on their project. I don't see this is not conjoined in that way. The reason this council started down this road, which went from 125,000, got up to 2-something million over 10 years to 4.2, and now we're down to 3.7, was to deal with the issue of providing parking. Everyone around this horseshoe says, finally, we're going to get some more downtown parking. And I have to say that for Mr. Wack to try to move forward with a project with the parking component in it was extremely difficult for him, and it should be. As was pointed out recently by another developer who actually does own parking decks, you don't see privately owned parking decks because they're not money makers. They're basically almost money losers, or you break even. And the cost to build them is so high, it does. It really affects your ability to build a project. I fully understand that. But from the parking perspective, as of the most recent conversations, the only commitment we have is we will do no harm, i.e., all we're guaranteeing you right now is we will build the spaces to take care of the needs of these two projects. That is it. There is no additional parking up to this point unless the discussions continue on and we get additional information. So that is now off the table. Now the discussion shifts to the issue of incentives. This is the first time we're not dealing directly with a business where we can go and say, you will do this, you will do this, we will get this if you don't do it. Because I'm assuming, again, because all it said in the draft is they have to guarantee $400,000 a year. I'm assuming that includes real estate and business personal property and everything else like that, which we all agree, you build anything there of large enough and you're going to get most of that revenue coming right off the top. So now we're talking basically about a business that is relocating to that location. We are talking about some, I will not say that they're very good restaurants, or could be potentially very good restaurants. We just approved a project down on Sophia Street, which is going to include restaurants. We've approved a project on Princess Anne that will probably include restaurants. Up to this point, they have not asked for anything. We keep focusing down on the restaurant issue to our downtown, yet if you look at the overall income from restaurants in the city, this is not what we always portray it to be as the big, huge thing that's filling our coffers with money in meals tax. Frankly, most of it's on Route 3, Route 1, Central Park, and off the 95 corridor. You know, we talk about, they're going to do millions of dollars of revenue, and I'm not going to dispute that. But if you look what the average income for a McDonald's, a Panera Bread, a Chick-fil-A, a Chipotle, which I know are not high-end restaurants in any way, shape, or form, from a revenue perspective, compare that to what we're doing downtown. Take Cracker Barrel, and I think we all agree, every time you get there, you got a 40-minute wait before you can get a seat. That's generating significant revenue. So when you look at the overall picture, we've got restaurants coming and going all the time. We also have looking at how many restaurants can we support downtown. Because one of the discussions on the revenue picture, even this council discussed in its last meeting, was, wait a minute, under the current dynamic, if they're going to do that much, somebody else is going to have to lose. So we're going to look at a potential, frankly, we didn't look at that. We just said, yeah, it probably will lose some, we just don't know how much it is. Then it's presented to us as, wait a minute, if you don't do this, then you're just going to get this. Don't like that analogy. It's basically this, or we're just going to see a bunch of condos or townhouses built on that site. Well, okay, if we accept that, which again I don't, staff said, well, right now, based on what we're putting into this and that, it's almost, from real estate and everything else, a wash. And again, we didn't consider that, frankly, the people that are buying those very large condos downtown now have a large amount of disposable income, which they're spending downtown to help maintain everything. We didn't take that in consideration in figuring up our numbers. It's almost a wash, and we're basically saying, oh yeah, but 10 years out, we're going to get this big windfall. When you look at inflation issues, you look at even restaurants in Fredericksburg over the past 10 years, and they're coming in and they're coming out, and the vast majority of them aren't incentivized. Yet we keep focusing on it here for this. And again, I've got another project we've done here, another project we've done here, another mixed-use project we've done up on Telegraph Hill. Telegraph Hill's paying us to do traffic improvements. Dreamland didn't ask for anything. Up to this point, I haven't heard Tommy asking for anything from his project. So all of a sudden, it's just this one project. And we're saying we're not, and again, I will stand to be corrected, but this is, I'm going by the last information we had. When we went into this discussion, the amount for the WAC project was less than $375 a year. And then, after numerous discussions about trying to pin down the parking issue, it came out that that project will require more parking, which means, you understand there's a lease agreement between these two entities that has to be paid to take these spaces. And basically, unless somebody tells me otherwise, right now what we are also doing is we're a pass-through for paying for leases for a project to pay for their parking requirements, which we've never done before. The restaurants in question, and again, this is where I have an issue with this zero-sum game position of if you don't get this, you're going to get nothing. It's $25,000, it's $450 or $800,000 or $450,000, or you're only getting $25,000. That's not correct. Everybody keeps telling us that stands up here, including the attorney on this particular project, everybody wants to be in Fredericksburg, and a lot of people want to be downtown. If those restaurants want to be here, they're going to find a way to be here. And if you really look at it from an economic standpoint, and we're talking about redeveloping the Route 3 corridor, or we're talking about redeveloping Route 1 corridor to be much more mixed development and everything else like that, financially, they'd be more successful on the Route 3 or Route 1 corridors than they are going to be downtown because they have the infrastructure and the parking and everything to support it. So we've lost the parking component, which was the be and all end all of this council's decision to move forward on this, and we're now basically down to no parking. We want to have these restaurants, and if we don't do this, the thinking is we're not going to get it and we're going to get something less, and I can't accept that. So for that reason, I am not going to support the motion. Thank you.
Councilor Fry.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I know I already spoke to this. I just want to give my view on it real quick, and also for the EDA, they probably can't say this, so I'll say it. I don't know. They don't have to agree either, but they put a lot of work in, and we have the opportunity. To me, in my opinion, we have the opportunity to be a part of what we're creating, and I know a lot of people, wasn't here for a lot of years. Some people moved here, but I remember Fredericksburg Hardware, and I remember how long it's been since nothing has been there, and so on and so forth. Freelance Star went out of business, so these are opportunities to me. Excuse me, Freelance Star didn't go out of business. They relocated. It's late. It's 10:25. I wonder who would write that in the paper. Sorry, but my point is we have some vacant blocks there right now with nothing going on, and we have some opportunities there. So let me rephrase that. And whatever business deals go through, whatever the case, but the EDA, they do present us, and Mr. Kelly was right to say that, yeah, we had some executive session meetings on it. But I also want to touch base on the fact that I remember, I feel a little bit old now, but I remember this area being called Dead Fred, and I don't know if you guys remember that, but I remember that. Well, give me a T-shirt. It'll be a retro now because it's not true. Yeah, it'll be a throwback T-shirt. Yeah. But I remember the Dead Fred and all of that stuff, and I remember growing up here with nothing to do and whatever the case. And it's different. It's a different atmosphere now. Who would have thought we'd have had something like a Benny's Pizza where you go and see 1 million people, for a $5 slice of pizza? It wasn't happening in Fredericksburg when I was a kid. It was the rec center had the world's greatest hot dog. I actually believed it. No disrespect. No disrespect to those folks, but imagine being a kid and it was this big sign that said the world's greatest hot dog or whatever. Like, wow, it's here in Fredericksburg. But that's what I had to look forward to. I think it was. I'm not even going to go into my little history in Fredericksburg, but my point is, it's revitalized. It's really happening here in Fredericksburg, and Sedona downtown. I mean, you look at those things, and yeah, Mr. Kelly. Respectfully, yeah, we all have our views, and I appreciate it, but the Dead Fred scenario, I'm happy that my kids won't grow up in Dead Fred. I don't know. You're talking about baseball up top of the hill now, and for those who don't know it, that's what they used to call Bragg Hill. That area, that whole area, it wasn't divided. That was, you go up top of the hill, that's Bragg Hill. So imagine what you heard about Bragg Hill in the 90s and so on and so forth. So pretty much you got baseball in Bragg Hill. Think about it. I mean, things are changing and it's getting better. So, but that's just my opinion. Mr. Kelly has his too. So thank you.
Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Basically, I'm going to echo some of the things that Mr. Fry said, but I do think this is an opportunity. I guess Dr. Duffy alluded to that as well. It's an opportunity to work together with some local developers to really change that entrance into our downtown. And the restaurants, every time a restaurant opens, first of all, the hardest businesses to keep going, the businesses that this project is looking to bring in are well known, and I think actually appeal to a little bit different clientele. They're not restaurants. We don't really have a decent size family friendly restaurant downtown. And I love the restaurants downtown, so don't take that the wrong way, but just most of our restaurants cater just to adults, or maybe some more are now catering to some teenagers and stuff. But I think this is, some of these places I think are going to be very family friendly and, college age friendly, and bringing more people into our downtown. So I'm truly hopeful that they're not going to cannibalize other businesses, other restaurants. And so I look forward to the opportunity to, just see more people enjoying our downtown. The office space, I think, the relocation of some of the businesses to this area, I think frees up opportunities for other businesses to move into the area, the domino effect. And so I really am excited about this program, this project. Is it perfect? No. Has it gone through some iterations? Yes. I think it's gotten to a really good point, and one that I think most of us can support. And I think the public will be very excited when it's done and when it does add to the vitality of our downtown. I also, went to college here, and in a time when there was nothing downtown, there was really no reason to go downtown. And that has changed, and it's changed for the better. And it's not just city people coming, enjoying, the downtown area. It's lots of people from the counties, the surrounding areas, who are coming in, spending their time, enjoying the city, spending their money, and then going home. And we're not having to provide, services for all of them. We're just providing an opportunity to socialize. And I think that's a plus. I think when you go into a place downtown, and these days, sometimes it's a shock that you don't know everybody in the place anymore. It used to be that you knew everybody. And so it's a little bit different look to places, but I think that's a real plus. I think it's bringing more people downtown, creating more opportunities for people, for businesses and residents alike, and tourists alike. And I think it's a win-win. So I will be supporting this project.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Withers, I just looked at the clock. I've been watching the clock back there. I had no idea it was 10:30. I've been revving you guys up.
Is it 10:30?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sitting there thinking it's 9:30.
I'll make this
Vice Mayor
quick.
Withers.
I'll make this quick. One thing that I don't think people have talked about yet, this partnership with this garage, and I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get some parking places, but I think by this partnership and this garage being built on this property, it will give the Vacos room for more intense development there, because she's going to have a lot of parking on this space. So, you know, all in all, I just think it's the best thing for us. So I'll cut it off at that.
Well, it's a
Thank you.
more efficient use of parking, and we will have some access to it. We didn't lose all the parking. Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very quickly, I will be in support of this. I generally don't like the use of incentives. I don't want us to be picking the winners and losers, but I think the but-for comparison that Mr. Freeling made earlier and the complexity of this project, I'm really looking forward to the design that we have seen in some of those executive sessions. And as regards to the parking, the way that we could potentially enclose it within other areas of the development, and to do it in a very aesthetically pleasing way, in a way that will not disrupt the fabric of the city, I think is very important and a big reason that I will be supporting this project. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a motion?
We already have a motion.
We have a motion. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, you have the motion, you have the second. Thank you. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-1. Kelly voting against.
Thank you all, and thank you, Tom and Kathy Wack, and Mr. Freeling and your staff. City Manager's update, Mr. Baruti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Because of the late hour, I'll just commend the City Manager's update to your attention. The calendar is also attached. I do encourage folks to participate in this budget process. They can certainly call City Manager's office at 372-1010 to gain more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Your calendar is attached. Don't forget that we have another meeting this week on Thursday, and this meeting is adjourned.
I was watching you, man. Oh, man.